Chapter 241. Qing Mu's originally tense face slowly relaxed at this moment. Blood-robed Pavilion could finally be saved. But the smile on Greenwood's face froze in an instant. That kind of smile on his face was so strange. But no one cared about the strange expression on Greenwood's face. Instead, they all looked at Rue Jean, who was standing in front of Greenwood. Rue Jean held a golden sword in his hand and directly stabbed it into Greenwood's abdomen. Moreover, a lot of internal energy was unceasingly pouring into Greenwood's body through the golden sword, and unceasingly destroying Greenwood's internal organs. A trace of black blood slowly flowed out from the corner of Greenwood's mouth. Obviously, Greenwood's kidney was already destroyed. You. At this moment, Greenwood blankly looked at Rue Jean in front of him, and his face was full of disbelief. Rue Jean, the master of 5 elements altar of blood-robed Pavilion, actually used his golden sword to attack him? Why did it become like this? Oh. Rue Jean's mouth slightly carried a smile, but it was a kind of fake smile which made people feel very gloomy and cold. He gently pulled out his golden sword from Greenwood's abdomen, bringing out a handful of blood mist. Aren't you usually very astute and always had that kind of see-through-everything expression on your face? How come now you have this kind of appearance? Rue Jean gently put his left hand on his fist holding the golden sword, then said to Sasori with a smile. I've troubled you to put on a show with me. White Tiger's injury is indeed my mistake, but the overall situation can't be changed. Blood-robed Pavilion is destined to be swallowed up by Akatsuki organization. Greenwood's eyes slightly opened. Just a moment ago Rue Jean was imprisoned in the arm cage by Sasori. Was it actually an act? Rue Jean, you bastard. Why did you do such a thing? Seeing the situation here, Ho-Tu didn't care about the various clay figurines that Dead-Ale shot at him. Letting the explosive clay hit his body, thick earth continued to run towards Greenwood. Ho-Tu, who was originally steady and dull, looked at Rue Jean very angrily. Humph, shouldn't you be the clearest about why I'm doing this? I, Rue Jean, have made outstanding contributions to the Blood-Robe Pavilion. Even Qi Yan's contributions to the Blood-Robe Pavilion are not as great as mine. Among the 5 altar lords I am the strongest. However, the Blood Garment Pavilion's master is not me. Previously, each and every one of you used the so-called dragonization test to brush off others and yourselves, and were satisfied with a mere altar master position. However, all of us know in our hearts that without the heavenly tribulation sword, is it really possible to pass the dragonization path? But now, a brat who came out of nowhere with a heavenly tribulation sword had passed through the path of dragon transformation that you all respected the most. Did you all take him as your leader? You didn't, because you want to protect the rights in your hands. You guys are willing to be mediocre, but I, Rue Jean, am not. What I want is for the reputation of the Blood-Robe Pavilion to resound throughout the shinobi world, and let everyone know the strength of the Blood-Robe Pavilion. All of this is impossible to achieve in the hands of people like you. Since that is the case, why don't I go and make friends with another force that has the same intention to fulfill my wish? When Rue Jean said this, his face was full of pride. It was as if he wasn't the one who had betrayed the Blood-Cloth Pavilion. Instead, it was Qing Mu, Qi Yan, and the others who had betrayed the Blood-Cloth Pavilion. So, the traitor among the altar lords is you? A voice suddenly sounded in the place where the disciples of the Blood-Robe Pavilion gathered, and Rue Jean slowly looked over. The disciples of the Blood-Robed Pavilion slowly spread out, as if they wanted to reveal the person who had spoken. The person's black hair had reached his shoulders, and he was wearing a black robe with some cloud patterns embroidered with red thread on the edge of the robe. What was even more noteworthy was that this person was holding a dark longsword in his hand. Although the style of the longsword looked very ordinary, an inexplicable chill appeared in everyone's eyes. It was as if this sword would slash their throats at any time. A sense of danger appeared in everyone's heart. This person was naturally Nangongja. When Nangongja saw Rue Jean standing in front of Aoki, his heart suddenly had a sudden impulse. As if something had happened, he walked out of the Blood-Robe Pavilion's attic, and hid his aura among the disciples of the Blood-Robe Pavilion. Bai Shui, who was wearing a green dress, was also quietly standing behind Nangongja, and her eyes were tightly staring at Rue Jean, who was already standing on the side of Akatsuki, and a kind of anger was brewing in her eyes. Although she had already guessed that there must be a ruthless person among the altar lords, but now there was a person who had directly betrayed the Blood-Robe Pavilion, which was really very difficult to accept. Rue Jean did not answer Nangongja's words. Instead, his eyes were tightly staring at the Heaven's Disaster Sword in Nangongja's hand. Nangongja naturally noticed Rue Jean's gaze, and slowly raised the Heaven's Disaster Sword in his hand. The corners of Nangong's mouth curled into a smile. A kind of understanding quietly appeared in Nangong's heart. He never thought that the answer to the matter that he had always been puzzled about would be so obvious. Was it you who ordered Qi Yan to destroy the village where I grew up? It was for this heaven's disaster sword. Rui Jin's words before had already clearly stated his thoughts about the heaven's disaster sword. Rui Jin wanted to become the head of the Blood Robe Pavilion, and was wholeheartedly ambitious, and was even willing to directly betray the Blood Robe Pavilion. Wasn't such a person the most likely person in the Blood Robe Pavilion who ordered others to slaughter the village where Nangongja grew up? Rui Jin had previously said that Qi Yan's contribution was not as big as his, and that Qi Yan was a relatively crude person, and was easily used by people who were stronger than him. Nangongja never thought that the truth was so obvious. Rui Jin. Rui Jin. Rui Jin. It was this person who had completely destroyed his stable life. He had no choice but to step into such a cruel world of life and death, and had no choice but to fight with others to save his own life. Everything was Rui Jin's plan. Chapter 242. At this moment, an uncontrollable anger was accumulating in Nangong's chest. There was no way to get it out of his chest. It was as if a huge rock was pressing down on his chest, making him feel very depressed. Nangongja had always been a rational person, and he could control his emotions well. Nangongja knew from the beginning that he was hiding in the Blood Cloak Pavilion. There was a high chance that he would find out who ordered the extermination of the people in the village where he used to live. However, when the truth was placed in front of him, he still couldn't control his emotions. This was normal. The so-called emotions were like a vast ocean, filled with all kinds of positive and negative feelings. Under normal circumstances, it was always in a calm state. However, when something beyond a certain limit appeared, it would be like an underwater earthquake in the depths of the ocean, and huge waves would be set off in an instant. The dam built by his own rationality was not even worth mentioning in the face of such power. Rui Jin, Nangong's eyes were a little red. Although his tone sounded so calm, everyone could clearly feel the killing intent in Nangong's heart. Qi Yan, the only one who knew a little bit of the inside story, was now unconscious. Only Qing Mu and Ho Tu were left looking at Nangongja in confusion. Village? Qing Mu and Ho Tu didn't understand what Nangongja said, but Rui Jin understood clearly. Sure enough, you're not from Nangong's family? Instead, you're from that village. Qi Yan really didn't know how to act. He actually let someone like you save his life. As expected, the heavenly Tao has changed. The heavenly tribulation sword that I've been longing for has fallen into the hands of my victim. Although Rui Jin kept saying that Nangongja was his victim, there was no trace of regret on his face. On the contrary, he seemed to find it very interesting, looking at Nangongja with interest. I say, shouldn't you be thanking me? If I didn't let people kill all the people in the village where you lived, how could you get the inheritance of Nangong's family? How could you become a famous Yama in the ninja world with the tribulation sword in your hand? If it weren't for me, maybe you wouldn't know that place and live a poor life. Sasori and Deidara stood next to Rui Jin, although they didn't know the cause and effect of the matter. However, the words of Rui Jin obviously made Sasori and Deidara touch the truth a little bit. It seems that there was a deep hatred between Rui Jin and Nangongja. However, whether it was Sasori or Deidara, they weren't the kind of people who cared about the lives of civilians. What was the difference between those who couldn't protect themselves and dogs? If they die, they die. Even what Rui Jin said was actually somewhat reasonable. Rui Jin actually indirectly created the current Nangongja. But this so-called fame. My parents, my family, they exchanged their lives for it. If I could choose, I would rather become the kind of person who dug in the soil with his back facing the sky. The sadness in Nangongja's eyes was so strong that it almost flowed out of his eyes. In fact, Nangongja didn't have so much desire. From the beginning of him becoming a ninja to now accepting the Blood Cloak Pavilion, it was all a choice made by Nangongja for self-protection. When he was on the path of dragonization, although it was his own heart's demon that controlled him to break through, that illusion was actually what Nangongja yearned for the most. Without that kind of senseless killing, without so much sadness, just quietly living with the people he cares about, this is what Nangongja yearns for the most in his heart. Unreasonable. Rui Jin looked at the sad Nangongja and felt very puzzled. There has never been such a stupid person, isn't it just a few lives? You can ask all the people in the shinobi world and ask them to choose the life of their loved ones and their strength at the top of the shinobi world. At least 80% of them wouldn't refuse such a choice, right? Stupid? I've lost my humanity and my persistence. If that's foolish enough, then let me be foolish enough to be foolish enough. Nangongja put his hand on the hilt of the Heaven's Disaster Sword. The slightly rough feeling of the hilt was constantly transmitted to Nangongja's brain through his palm. The sword was cold, but the anger and sadness had turned into a flame burning in Nangongja's chest, and it couldn't be calmed down for a long time. Want to stop these flames from burning his heart? It's very simple. Kill Rue Jin in front of him, who was bragging and thinking that he had done a very interesting thing. No one expected Nangongja to make a move at this time, but Rue Jin, as a swordsman, saw Nangongja put his hand on the hilt of the sword, and he was already secretly on guard in his heart. Sure enough, Nangongja used an extraordinary speed to pull out the Heaven's Disaster Sword from the sheath in his hand. The emotions that were originally suppressed in his chest were instantly released along with the unsheathing of the sword, turning into a combustion accelerant that was added to Nangongja's sword chi. A gust of wind rushed towards Rue Jin along with the sound of a sword being unsheathed. Nangongja's figure holding the heavenly calamity sword followed closely behind. Ding! The crisp sound of the blades colliding instantly sounded, and Rue Jin's hair fluttered because of the wind when Nangongja pulled out his sword. The dark blade of the Heaven's Disaster Sword in Nangongja's hand collided with the bright blade of the golden sword in Rue Jin's hand, and even left a little bit of sparks in the air. Seeing Nangongja make a move, Bisui also grabbed the long sword hanging on his waist, and wanted to step forward and fight together with Nangongja. Aoki also ignored the wound on his abdomen and internal injuries, grabbed his dragon-head wooden staff, and wanted to fight together with Ho-Tu and Nangongja against the people of Akatsuki Organization. After all, Akatsuki Organization still had Sasori, Deidara, and many other ninjas here. Although Nangongja didn't look back, but he could feel that the person behind him was about to make a move. Let me end this battle, otherwise I will regret it for the rest of my life. It's rare for me to be willful, right? Chapter 243. Bisui and Aoki obviously felt the serious feeling in Nangongja's tone, and slowly put down the weapons in their hands. The long whip was once again hung on the side of the waist, the dragon-head wooden staff was again on the ground, and the clenched fists were also slowly opened. On the other hand, in the direction of Scorpion and Dead Ale, the two of them gradually relaxed their nervous emotions. Because although Nangongja and Rue Jin were confronting each other with their swords, his eyes were still staring at these two people. Although Sasori and Nangongja had not directly fought, but Deidara and Nangongja had a fierce fight. Nangongja's eyes at this moment made people feel a kind of bone-chilling coldness in their hearts. Sasori and Deidara believed that as long as they dared to intervene in the battle, Nangongja would definitely cut off their heads at all costs. When Nangongja attacked Rue Jin with an instant burst of speed, that kind of unimaginable speed and murderous aura really made people feel a kind of strength that was difficult to ignore. Moreover, this Rue Jin was originally a spy used by Akatsuki to understand the information of Blood-Clothed Pavilion, and his main purpose was to have a one-sided contact with Xiaonan. In the end, how much power Rue Jin could play in the process of subduing Blood-Clothed Pavilion, Sasori and Deidara were not so clear. For Rue Jin, facing such a threat that may lead to their death was really unwise. After all, Sasori and Deidara were more like pure ninjas. Although they had their own various plans and tricks when fighting with people, but their kind of plan for the overall situation still had some shortcomings. TSK, these people of Akatsuki are really not so trustworthy. Rue Jin also felt very uncomfortable in his heart, but his cooperation with Akatsuki was just a win-win relationship of mutual benefit. At this time, Akatsuki did not have a qualified leader, so he made such a decision to stand by and do nothing. Rue Jin still thought clearly. Right now, the biggest problem was the Nangongja in front of him, who was holding the Heavenly Tribulation Sword. As long as he could directly kill Nangongja here, then Scorpion and Dead Ale would naturally be able to see his ability. And at that time, the people of Akatsuki Organization would attack and capture the headquarters of Blood-Robed Pavilion in one fell swoop. Relying on his means and strength, Rue Jin felt that he could completely control Blood-Robed Pavilion in his own hands. You really want to kill me? Rue Jin looked at Nangongja and said with a smile. To be honest, when I first saw you, I already felt that I would have to fight you sooner or later. In the shinobi world, there are very few people who use swords, and it's even more difficult for people like you and me to fight. Now that you've made me a target you must kill, that's for the best. Let's enjoy the slaughter now. Enjoy. Nangongja's tone was slightly cold. This is not the kind of swordsmanship between us, but a kind of slaughter. Since you want to enjoy it, then I'll let you enjoy it. With your life as the price for this enjoyment. Liang, protect my body and fight with me. Nangongja secretly said in his heart. This was the summoning language of Li Yang's black armor, which hadn't been summoned for a long time. When Nangongja brought his younger sister, Mishiro and little Linger to the Lion Clan's different space, and also brought Uchiha Fugaku, his wife, and Yuri Koyuri to the Lion Clan's different space, Li Yang once told him that the Lion Clan's different space has an instinctive rejection of people who come from the shinobi world, and that they need Li Yang to stabilize the space, otherwise, these people are likely to be rejected by the Lion Clan's different space. This was also the reason why Nangongja didn't summon Li Yang to become the black armor that he usually wore, even though he would occasionally engage in battle with others, and even when the battle wasn't going his way, Nangongja didn't summon Li Yang to become the black armor that he always wore. But today Nangongja knew that if he really wants to defeat Rue Jin in front of him, and at the same time protect the Bloodrobe Pavilion, then Li Yang's power must not be idle. As long as he can calculate the time clearly, he can guarantee that the people in the Lion Clan's different space will not be rejected by the Lion Clan's different space. The Lion Clan is a warlike race, and Li Yang has been staying in the Lion Clan's different space for many years. To be honest, it's very uncomfortable. When Nangongja issued a summoning signal, Li Yang's face showed a very human-like smile. He shook his body and the crisp sound of bones colliding rang out. With a step, he stepped into a spatial tunnel. At this moment, several space cracks appeared behind Nangongja in the shinobi world. From time to time, black light particles drilled out of them and fell on Nangongja's body. Gauntlets, breastplates, helmet. Pieces of armor appeared on Nangongja's body, and black lightning jumped in the armor on Nangongja's body. The black armor, which has not seen the light of day for a long time, once again appeared in the shinobi world. Li Yang, I've really wronged you over the years. But today we can finally fight side by side again. This time, let's fight to our heart's content again. Nangongja said slowly to the black armor on his body. Although his heart was full of murderous intent, Nangongja could still clearly feel the unconcealable joy from Li Yang. Of course, Nangong boy, we don't have anything else to do today. We just came here to fight to our heart's content. Your enemy is my enemy. Li Yang's rough voice sounded in Nangongja's mind. Obviously, Li Yang also knew what he was fighting for. Although fighting was a personal matter, when there were people who understood and supported you, it was hard to avoid feeling a kind of comfort. Sharp metal. I'll let you see the strength of the two of us. The Yama of the shinobi world is not just Nangongja. As Nangongja's voice sounded, the lightning on the black armor began to slowly spread to the Heaven's Tribulation sword in Nangongja's hand. At the same time, Nangongja also instilled the sword energy and internal energy in his body into the Heaven's Tribulation sword as if they were free. The Heaven's Tribulation sword instantly bloomed with dazzling black light. The sword energy traveled for 3,000 miles, and a single sword light shone on 19 continents. Right now, Nangongja is the real and strongest Nangongja. Chapter 244. There were a lot of things that strangers might not take to heart, and perhaps the people close to you might not take to heart, but your enemies would remember these things very clearly. The black armor that had fought with Nangongja in the past, and was engraved with many scars, may not have appeared in front of people in these past few years, but Rue Jin had never forgotten about this thing that could make Nangongja's strength soar. Whether it was its superior defense or the thunder that constantly jumped on its body, it was an important means to increase Nangongja's strength. When Nangongja's disaster sword in his hand, under the effect of internal energy, sword chi and the black armor's thunder, it bloomed with a black brilliance, making it difficult for Rue Jin's eyes to see everything around him. Rue Jin also stimulated his inner vigilance to the highest level. At this moment, whether it was Bloodcloth Pavilion or Akatsuki's eyes, they could no longer see the situation around Nangongja and Rue Jin, because both of them were enveloped by the black brilliance. However, within the black brilliance, they could still clearly hear the sound of metal clashing. Obviously, even after losing their vision, Nangongja and Rue Jin were still engaged in a fierce battle. Not long after, the black brilliance had already slowly dissipated, leaving no trace behind. Nangongja and Rue Jin were standing opposite each other at this moment. Both of them more or less had some scars left behind from the battle. Rue Jin's clothes had a lot of holes and there were even wounds in many places. The wounds were charred black, obviously caused by the thunder that constantly surged on Nangongja's sword. On the other hand, Nangongja's condition was not bad. After all, his body was covered by the black armor of Li Yang, and over the years, Li Yang's strength had not stagnated. Many of the large and small holes on the armor had completely disappeared at this moment, and in the battle just now, Rue Jin's sword that could easily cut through the armor made by Sasori only left a few white marks on Nangongja's body, and it can be said that Nangongja was unharmed. I didn't expect that in these past few years, you have not been hiding in the ninja world and obviously didn't experience such a harsh battle, but your strength has indeed risen so quickly. I still underestimated you. Rui Jin looked at Nangongzhe and said with a slightly fierce tone. The information about Nangongzhe's strength was actually very little, and most of the information about Nangongzhe's strength came from some of the previous battles with the other 5 great ninja villages, coupled with some of Nangongzhe's previous performance on the Dragon Transformation Road. Rui Jin has already used his imagination to the extreme to speculate about Nangongzhe's strength, but it seems that he still underestimated Nangongzhe. This kind of growth and strength is simply unheard of. No matter what kind of person, if they want to grow quickly, it is inevitable that they will have to engage in some life and death battles, and rely on the great fear that comes from these life and death battles to become stronger, but Nangongzhe has obviously not fought in any of these years, except for the Dragon Transformation Road of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, which was a huge test, and after that, he didn't have any experience at all. In such a situation he can grow so fast. Isn't he cheating or is he a protagonist? There is more that you don't know. I wasn't the kind of person who liked to fight with others. When I finally settled down and let my mind settle down, I didn't know why, but the memories of many battles in the past appeared very clearly in my mind. I spent almost every day thinking about my past battles. My inadequacies, my shortcomings, and my bad habits were all clearly seen by me. Isn't it natural for your strength to grow? Nangongzhe has actually experienced enough battles, whether it was during the Shinobi World War or after the mission in the Woodleaf. This kind of combat experience is enough. Even if the number of battles of Rui Jin and Akame in the Blood Cloak Pavilion, who are in charge of the expedition department in the Blood Cloak Pavilion, is added up, they may not be as many as Nangongzhe. When Nangongzhe was idle, a lot of memories involuntarily emerged, and Nangongzhe has been thinking about how to improve his swordsmanship. Swordsmanship, for Nangongzhe, is a kind of passion, even if Nangongzhe doesn't like to fight, but this kind of thinking makes Nangongzhe feel very interesting. Isn't it more important to understand what you have than to get more things that you haven't digested yet? Rui Jin, if you admit the crimes you have committed, I will give you a quick death. After all, you have also contributed a lot to the Blood Cloak Pavilion. As the head of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, I can't ignore the blood and sweat you have contributed to the Blood Cloak Pavilion because of my own feelings. Nangongzhe's ultimate goal is to take the Blood Cloak Pavilion into his own hands and make the Blood Cloak Pavilion become a real force in his hands. Some of the necessary pretenses are actually necessary now, at least to let the people of the Blood Cloak Pavilion see Nangongzhe's attitude towards the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Think about it, because of Rui Jin's contribution to the Blood Cloak Pavilion, the head of the Blood Cloak Pavilion is willing to give a quick death to the enemy who killed the place where he lives. Naturally, he will be more lenient to the ordinary disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. At the same time, if a person like Rui Jin can be killed by the head of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion can see Nangongzhe's ruthless means. His words have two effects at the same time. It is really killing two birds with one stone, isn't it? The meaning of Nangongzhe's words, whether it is Rui Jin on the opposite side, or Qing Mu and Ho Tu standing behind Nangongzhe, they are all people who have been in high positions for a long time. As for Bai Shui? At this moment there is a smile on Bai Shui's face. When Nangongzhe exploded, Bai Shui was really worried that Nangongzhe would do something impulsive. But now that Nangongzhe can say such words, it is obvious that he has calmed down. Leaders are often like this. When you become the leader of a group of people, you actually take out a part of yourself and replace it with the thoughts of your subordinates. One's words and actions would always be interpreted differently by many people. A qualified leader had to think of all the guesses that could be caused by one's words and actions, and then guide everyone's guesses to the path of one's own desire. Judging from Nangongzhe's actions, it was obvious that he had obtained 3 of them. Chapter 245. Although such a shallow method of subduing people's hearts is extremely easy to see through, its function is not as simple as its operation. Everyone knows that if you want to leave a good impression, you have to show your kind and amiable side. But what if you need to show your kind and amiable side to someone who has a deep hatred for you? It's easy to know but hard to do. Many times this is the case. I did misjudge you, but I won't just give up like this. The path I choose must be the most suitable path for the Blood Cloak Pavilion. In the shinobi world, the Blood Cloak Pavilion is the biggest anomaly. When most people's power comes from chakra, there is a group of people who have a cultivation system that is not inferior to chakra. There is a good saying, if you are not my kind, your heart will be different. Aren't people like us the so-called anomaly? If we can always hide in the mountains and not reveal our traces, those people in the shinobi world may not feel that we are a threat. But now we have to go out of such a deep mountain. This is what our disciples want. As long as it is what the people want, there is almost no way to stop it. Even if we, the Altar Lord, rely on our power to temporarily calm everyone's restless heart, we will eventually come down from such a position. When the time comes, we will still have to face such a situation of being suspected by most of the forces in the shinobi world. In this case, why don't we take the initiative to integrate into a force in the shinobi world? The water of the 5 great shinobi villages is too deep. If we go in, we will become nothing but ashes. And the daimyo of various countries and some slightly smaller shinobi villages don't have the courage to accept us. Isn't the Akatsuki organization the best choice? If we join it, we will become a large part of its strength and even become half of its power. Why don't we choose such a path? But many of you are like this, pretending to be deaf and mute, only caring about living a good life and not making any trouble during your tenure. Just like that, I became an ostrich burying its head in the sand. I'm showing you a path. Moreover, this Nangongzhe is from the Woodleaf sect. Who knows if he has any ulterior motives with the Woodleaf sect? Maybe he wants to crush the Blood Cloak Pavilion and merge it with the Woodleaf sect to strengthen the Woodleaf sect. In fact, Ruijin already understood that if he really wanted to defeat Nangongzhe, it would be very difficult to achieve his wish. Before Nangongzhe put on the black armor, he and Nangongzhe were evenly matched. However, now that Nangongzhe had put on the black armor, it was as if he was a cheater. Ruijin already understood what Nangongzhe said just now. In fact, Nangongzhe wanted to take the Blood Cloak Pavilion into his own hands. In this case, wouldn't the people of Blood Cloak Pavilion be his biggest help? Even if he might die under the sword of Nangongzhe, he could also put a big nail in the Blood Cloak Pavilion's rule for Nangongzhe. Ruijin hoped to become the actual leader of Blood Cloak Pavilion, and he hoped to have great power. But now that he revealed his identity, the people of Akatsuki organization hesitated. It was like putting Ruijin directly on the fire to roast. Xiaonan, the only one who knew the specific plan of Akatsuki organization, had already fallen into a coma. Another person who might know the plan was missing at the moment. Scorpion and Deadale just wanted to get out of this matter. Ruijin was now in a situation where he was going to die. Since Nangongzhe didn't want to let him have an easy time, then he didn't mind putting a nail in Nangongzhe's head. Wasn't it good to make Nangongzhe uncomfortable? Ruijin's words carried a bit of defense for himself, and also a bit of slander for Nangongzhe, which was transmitted to the ears of every disciple of Blood Cloak Pavilion. Although one couldn't tell what they were thinking from their expressions, such heart-wrenching words would definitely play a certain role. This was the so-called heart anchor. It was unknown whether it would erupt one day due to certain reasons. Broken back dog, once you lose your support, do you only know how to make noise and disturb people's ears? Nangongzhe looked at Ruijin with a bit of disgust. At this moment, his face seemed to have a bit of schadenfreude. All along, Nangongzhe felt that his enemy should be a scheming and astute person. After all, his ruthless and merciless behavior of treating human life as grass was indeed not something a person without intelligence would do. He used Qiyan as a knife in his hand to achieve his goal, and quietly contacted the people of Akatsuki organization as his foreign aid to help him seize the power of Blood Cloak Pavilion. But now Ruijin was not as wise as he had imagined. On the contrary, he was playing such petty tricks which made people feel very contemptuous. But thinking carefully, Nangongzhe felt that the treacherous and short-sighted Ruijin in front of him was more like the mastermind behind the scenes. Why did he want to kill Nangong family's grandfather and grandson? Because he was greedy for the power of Blood Cloak Pavilion represented by Heavenly Tribulation Sword. Why did he order Qiyan to carry out such a pursuit? Because he didn't want his resume to be tainted by the slightest blemish. Why did he want to join hands with Akatsuki organization? Because his own strength and means were not enough. Such a person, once he lost his disguise, lost the possibility of ordering others, lost the support of the forces he relied on. In the end, it was possible for him to become like a broken-back dog, wasn't it? Even if Nangongzhe had now cursed Ruijin, but Ruijin still did not dare to use the sword in his hand to fight a life-and-death battle with Nangongzhe. He wanted to let Nangongzhe experience his spirit as a man, as a swordsman. Instead, he looked at Nangongzhe with a ferocious face, just like a dog baring its teeth. Whether it was Aoki by Shuei Hotu or even Sasori and Deidara of Akatsuki organization, looking at the current appearance of Ruijin, they couldn't help but have a feeling of disgust in their hearts. Such a person was actually the Altar Lord of Blood Cloak Pavilion who used to be on the same level as them? Such a person was actually a partner of their organization? As Nangongja said, Rui Jin was actually more like a broken-back dog at this moment. Especially in the ninja world, where individual strength was worshipped and heroism was full of admiration, Rui Jin was simply the most despicable kind of person. Chapter 246. I have to say, I originally regarded you as a great enemy in my life. But now you're really just a barking dog with a broken spine. Since that's the case, it's better not to make everyone feel uncomfortable here. The disgust in Nangongja's eyes became more and more intense. This was the person he regarded as his enemy? It was really disappointing and he couldn't bear to look at him. Sword chi slowly accumulated on the sword in Nangongja's hand. Strands of sword chi were born from the sword, and gradually, a dragon formed from sword chi appeared in front of Nangongja. It wasn't as huge as the dragon that Nangongja condensed when he fought against Nine Tails, Danzo, and Dead Ale. Instead it looked much smaller. The entire dragon was actually only 7 to 8 meters long, and its width was also very narrow, about 40 to 50 centimeters. However, this sword energy dragon was even more solid. Under the illumination of the sun, it reflected its own luster, as if it was a dragon carved out of glass. Endless sword chi condensed within the dragon, not showing off its sharpness at all. In fact, if it were not for the fact that one could clearly see the figure of the sword chi dragon, one might not even know that there was such a majestic dragon here. Nangongja slowly shook his head as if looking at Rui Jin with some pity. His family, the place he grew up in, were all destroyed by the hands of such a person. Although Nangongja never said it, it was indeed a knot in Nangongja's heart. Now that he had finally reached a moment of understanding, Nangongja couldn't help but feel a little relieved. Go! He pointed the Heaven's Disaster Sword in his hand towards Rui Jin, and the sword chi dragon instantly seemed to have found its target. A sound that sounded like the clashing of swords or the roar of a dragon instantly rang out. Nangongja's murderous aura and hostility instantly surrounded Rui Jin's body. Rui Jin's surroundings seemed to be filled with cement, sticky and difficult to move. Rui Jin's face was a little proud, because he actually secretly tricked Nangongja, which made Rui Jin feel that it was very worthwhile. But the sword chi dragon kept rushing towards him. Originally, because of the distance, he couldn't see the sword chi dragon so clearly at this moment. A unique cold feeling of sword chi seemed to have reached the tip of Rui Jin's nose. His pupils began to dilate, and a kind of extreme panic appeared in his eyes. There was no one who wasn't afraid of death. Even if some people seemed to take death lightly, when death really came to them, there was no one who wouldn't be afraid. At this moment, Rui Jin was like this. Rui Jin wanted to open his mouth and accuse Akatsuki organization of not following the rules and not helping him. Rui Jin wanted to open his mouth and question everyone in Bloodcloth Pavilion. He obviously stood on the opposite side of Bloodcloth Pavilion for the sake of Bloodcloth Pavilion, so why didn't they agree with him? Rui Jin wanted to open his mouth and insult Nangongja. He wanted to insult him for being pretentious. He wanted to insult Nangongja for snatching his lifelong goal of becoming the head of the Blood Garment Pavilion so easily. But in the end, Rui Jin didn't have anything to say. Rui Jin only hoped that he could open his mouth and beg for mercy. He wanted to say that he was willing to give up all his dignity to help Nangongja subdue Bloodcloth Pavilion, as long as he could live. Rui Jin wanted to say all the words, but he didn't say them. Sword Chi Dragon slowly coiled around Rui Jin's body. Dragons had the nature of snakes, so Sword Chi Dragon's body slowly moved around Rui Jin's body. The sharpness of Sword Chi unceasingly cut the flesh of Rui Jin's body, and a trace of blood unceasingly flowed out from Rui Jin's body, but not a trace of blood leaked out, instead all the blood accumulated in the body of Sword Chi Dragon. After all, the people of Bloodcloth Pavilion and Akatsuki organization were all cultivators, so everyone's eyesight was very good. Everyone could clearly see that Sword Chi Dragon unceasingly cut a small piece of flesh from Rui Jin's body, and then slowly become more and more fine with the rotation of Sword Chi Dragon, and finally integrated into Sword Chi Dragon. Just like a glass of water being continuously dripped with red ink, Sword Chi Dragon also gradually changed into a kind of red color unique to human blood. This is Nangongja's way of dealing with his enemies? This kind of method is close to death by 1,000 cuts. Nangongja himself was wearing a very heavy-looking armor, and his eyes drifted over everyone's body. Killing people with just a nod of the head, but this kind of killing method really made everyone feel a chill in their heart. So, this is Yama? Slowly, the Sword Chi Dragon was completely filled with the color of blood. The Sword Chi Dragon also stopped its rotation. Everyone thought that this matter was finally over, but behind Nangong's back, a shadow appeared. This shadow had green eyes and fangs, but its body was wearing a big red robe. If this kind of funny appearance was dressed up by other people, people would definitely think that this person was a lunatic. But this shadow was so majestic that no one dared to have the slightest bit of blasphemy. This was the shadow of Yama that Nangongja condensed in the past. Now, Yama was becoming more and more solid, more and more majestic. This kind of shadow also gave Nangongja some special abilities, such as extracting a person's soul. Everyone could see that the shadow behind Nangongja put its hand above the sword Chi dragon, and a somewhat blurry but vaguely visible figure of Rue Jin slowly floated towards Yama's hand at this moment. The shadow looked very transparent, and its face looked very tired, but when the shadow realized that it was being absorbed by such a hand, the obvious panic seemed to make everyone empathize with it. But the shadow couldn't resist. Thus, he could only allow himself to be sucked into the palm of the King Yenlua's projection with endless panic. Then Yama's shadow was already standing behind Nangongja, but the palm that was stretched out towards Rue Jin's soul was now open, and there seemed to be a yellow and red flame burning in the middle, and Rue Jin's soul was constantly being burned in it. Chapter 247. Rue Jin would forever sink into the palm of Nangongja's Yama shadow, unable to break free and suffering eternal calamity. This was Nangongja's end to his past. Such an ending should be enough to appease the inner resentment of those innocent lives, right? Nangongja gently swung the Heaven's Disaster Sword in his hand. The Dark Heaven's Disaster Sword jumped freely like an elf on Nangongja's fingertips, and finally returned to the scabbard with a clear cry like a tired bird returning home. The sound of the sword hilt and scabbard coming into contact was crisp and pleasant, and the whole battlefield seemed to echo with such a sound. At the same time when the sound of scabbard and sword hilt intersecting was heard, the glass-like sword Chi dragon condensed by Nangongja's sword Chi completely stopped moving. Cracks gradually spread on the sword Chi dragon. Obviously, Nangongja had released his control over the sword Chi dragon. Although sword Chi had a certain ability to maintain its stability, once it lost its owner's control, it would naturally dissipate. The current sword Chi dragon was the same. Like a piece of glass, it slowly shattered, pieces of blood-colored glass continued to fall to the ground. The sunlight passed through the pieces of glass, turning into a seven-colored light under the decomposition of the glass. At the same time, a strong bloody smell continued to spread from the place where the sword Chi dragon collapsed. Gradually, the sword Chi dragon had completely collapsed, revealing a skeleton with a golden luster. It maintained a struggling posture in front of everyone. The sunlight shone on the skeleton, and the seven-colored light continued to emerge from the bottom of the skeleton. All this should have been very bloody, but at this moment, there was an indescribable beauty produced in such a place. Scorpion and Deadale, who were most attracted to the concept of art, were also stunned. Scorpion's art was eternal art. Immortality was the most appropriate summary of Scorpion's art. Deadale's art was an instantaneous explosion. The kind of art that compressed all emotions in life, and then burst out in one breath was what Deadale thought of as art. But no matter what opinions these two people had about their art, there was an indescribable feeling of inferiority in their hearts at this moment. This was because their art was born to better kill people, and they had crowned killing with the name of art. But real art needed the most fundamental criterion, that was beauty. Art was an existence that gave people a kind of beauty. If an art itself didn't have the most basic factor of beauty, then how could it be called art? At this moment, what Nangongja showed was a kind of beauty created through life. Whether it was Scorpion or Deadale, they asked themselves and felt that their art was indeed a bit one-sided and overly self-centered. If they didn't believe it, just look at the eyes of those people of Bloodcloth Pavilion and Akatsuki Organization. Rue Jin, as the altar master of Bloodcloth Pavilion and a collaborator of Akatsuki Organization, used such a miserable way to bid farewell to the world. Although people's eyes inevitably had fear of Nangongja, they still couldn't let their eyes leave the direction of Rue Jin's skeleton, because such a scene was a kind of beauty that no one had ever seen before. Nangongja turned his eyes to Scorpion and Deadale. Now the internal problems of Bloodcloth Pavilion had come to an end, but as the enemy of Bloodcloth Pavilion, Fangshao Organization was still eyeing covetously from the side. The reason why Nangongja was willing to take the risk to summon Li Yang and solve the problem of Rue Jin as soon as possible, was that he was worried that Akatsuki Organization would attack Bloodcloth Pavilion regardless of all the previous agreements after the battle. After all, Nangong's participation in the battle was actually a violation of the rules that had been set at the beginning. At this time, if Akatsuki organization wanted to intervene, there was really no way to stop them. After all, the reason was not on their side, wasn't it? Therefore, Nangongji used such a method to deal with Ruijin, because he wanted to use such a method to let Akatsuki organization understand that if they really fought with Nangongji, they wouldn't have much advantage. Even if he won in the end, Akatsuki organization would suffer huge losses. After all, after Nangongji defeated Ruijin, he obviously didn't even take a breath. After a while, if the battle really started, not to mention that the people of Bloodcloth Pavilion had already fallen into a desperate situation, just Nangongji alone could kill who knows how many people of Akatsuki organization. The ultimate goal of Akatsuki organization was not as simple as taking down Bloodcloth Pavilion. Who knows how long Akatsuki organization would need to recuperate to recover from such a loss. Sasori and Deidara probably knew a little bit about Akatsuki organization's ambition, so choosing to retreat at this time was also a wise move. Two guests of Akatsuki organization, our Bloodcloth Pavilion's internal farce can be considered to have come to an end. I also respect Akatsuki organization very much. From a small force of Rain Country until today, presumably Akatsuki organization still has a lot of smart people. At this time, you must have already understood that Bloodcloth Pavilion has already stabilized. Anyone who wants to tear off a piece of meat from Bloodcloth Pavilion's body is bound to be prepared for Bloodcloth Pavilion's counterattack. I don't know, what are you planning to do? Nangongji lightly flicked his lapel, and didn't know when a little bit of dust had gotten on his lapel. With a little bit of smile on his face, he looked at Sasori and Deidara, but the heart of Sasori and Deidara was ice cold. Xiaonan was still unconscious and could not give out any orders. She turned her head to look at her own camp. After Deidara lightly nodded his head towards Sasori, Sasori also understood the meaning of Deidara. Now there was no meaning in continuing the battle. After all, Akatsuki organization had already lost Ruijin this kind of tool to recruit the remnants of Bloodcloth Pavilion. Now although they were unwilling, but they really could only give up at this point. Gentlemen, this time our Akatsuki organization was rude. Originally this person Ruijin had asked us to help Bloodcloth Pavilion to pacify the internal affairs of our Akatsuki organization, this kind of reason, but now your honorable organization obviously doesn't need the help of our Akatsuki organization. After all, you and I are friendly organizations with many cooperation. Since this matter is over, we naturally should withdraw. Although Sasori's voice was still low and hoarse, but everyone knew that Akatsuki organization had now given in. This invasion of Akatsuki organization had really reached the end of this moment. Chapter 248. War and politics are actually such simple things. This is the most primitive behavior of seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages. If you can gain benefits, then it is naturally worth fighting, but if you will suffer more losses, then you naturally have to stop fighting. Everything is actually so simple and primitive. Hearing Sasori's words, Nangongji also cupped his hands towards Sasori, Deidara and the numerous ninjas standing behind them, and said with a smile, "Sorry to trouble you. We still have a lot of things to deal with in our blood-robed pavilion. Please help yourselves." Nangongji didn't feel anything wrong with Sasori's behavior of pushing all the blame on Ruijin. Anyway, he was already a dead person. Even if he put all the blame on Ruijin, there was no way for Ruijin to come back from the dead and accuse Sasori of being shameless. And throwing all the blame on Ruijin's head was obviously the best solution in this deadlock. Both sides had a way to step down, so why not? "Sorry to disturb you." Sasori turned around and walked towards the periphery of the forest. Seeing Sasori's action, Deidara and other Akatsuki members could only follow Sasori's footsteps and leave the blood-robed pavilion. The beginning of this battle was extremely fierce, but the ending became so dull, which really made everyone feel a little disappointed and depressed in their heart. When the last Akatsuki ninja disappeared from the sight of the blood-robed pavilion's disciples, the blood-robed pavilion's disciples finally put down a huge stone in their heart. Their lives were finally saved, and the blood-robed pavilion was finally saved. Long live the head. Don't know who was the first one to start, but the voice was very loud. The blood-robed pavilion's disciples also seemed to have woken up. If it wasn't for their head appearing at the last moment, turning the situation around and even killing Ruijin, a blood-robed pavilion's traitor, then presumably their lives would have already been lost. Long live the head. Long live the head. Long live the head. The shouts became louder and louder. It was as if a trickle of water had unknowingly converged into a huge ocean. The surging waves startled the birds in the forest and filled the hearts of the Blood Cloak Pavilion disciples with boiling hot blood. A feeling of pride had unconsciously filled the heart of every disciple of Blood-Robed Pavilion. This was their leader. Even in the face of such a huge force like Akatsuki organization, he would still spare no effort to preserve the life of every disciple of Blood-Robed Pavilion. Wouldn't such a head seat be in line with everyone's wishes? Hearing the shouts of the disciples around him, Qingmu couldn't help but glance at Nangongzhe and Bai Shui. Qingmu knew that Nangongzhe must have been at the headquarters of the Blood Cloak Pavilion for a long time, but he just watched as countless disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion died because of this war. But Qingmu couldn't blame Nangongzhe, because Nangongzhe had indeed saved most of the disciples of Blood-Robed Pavilion. How many years had it been since Qingmu had seen the disciples of Blood-Robed Pavilion so united to support one person like this? The Blood-Robed Pavilion, which used to fight for its own sake, had disappeared. Only under the leadership of Nangongzhe could Blood-Robed Pavilion continue to exist. Qingmu fiercely inserted the dragon head wooden staff in his hand into the ground. Then, his skinny hand slid down along the dragon head wooden staff. Qingmu's body also slid down along with his hand. Qingmu half knelt in front of Nangongzhe with one knee on the ground. Greetings to the head. Thank you for saving Blood-Robed Pavilion. Long live the head. Seeing that Qingmu had already knelt down, Ho-Tu could only kneel down and say to Nangongzhe, long live the head. Bai Shui had a smile on her face. Everything was a foregone conclusion. In the future, Blood-Robed Pavilion would no longer be the Blood-Robed Pavilion of the Five Elements Altar Lord, but Nangongzhe's Blood-Robed Pavilion. Her 3 years of planning and Nangongzhe's 3 years of forbearance obviously had enough effect. With a smile, Bai Shui also half knelt on the ground and said to Nangongzhe, long live the head. When the disciples of Blood-Robed Pavilion saw several altar lords kneeling down, they naturally also knelt in front of Nangongzhe. Looking at the appearance of the people in front of him, Nangongzhe knew that Blood-Robed Pavilion had really become a force in his hands from now on. He finally had his own territory in the ninja world and he had his own forces. Whether it was himself, his sister, Mishiro or Little Linger, they finally had a little bit of their own paradise. Nangongzhe pressed his hand in the void, apparently hoping that the disciples of Blood-Robed Pavilion would be quiet. He had something to say. I, Nangongzhe, have always felt that I am actually a very ordinary person. I can be happy, happy and sad. I am no different from you. You said that I saved Blood-Robed Pavilion and pulled it back from the edge of life and death, but I don't think so. It was everyone who shed their blood for Blood-Robed Pavilion that saved Blood-Robed Pavilion. It was each and every one of you who were not afraid of sacrificing your lives to fight the enemy and save Blood-Robed Pavilion. Qingmu, Ho-Tu, Akane, and Bai Shui all have strong feelings for Blood-Robed Pavilion, so they were willing to put themselves in danger to save Blood-Robed Pavilion. I am just an ordinary person. I can defeat 10 people, 100 people or even 1,000 people, but there will always be a time when my strength will be exhausted. I alone have no way to guard Blood-Robed Pavilion and prevent Blood-Robed Pavilion from suffering any danger from now on. Only all of you present and countless disciples of Blood-Robed Pavilion scattered in the ninja world can really save Blood-Robed Pavilion. We are all the most ordinary people in the world, but when we are together, no one will dare to underestimate us. Because we are Blood-Robed Pavilion. I am the head of Blood-Robed Pavilion. From now on, no matter who wants to attack Blood-Robed Pavilion, I will be the one standing at the forefront. This is my promise to all of you who have shed your blood for Blood-Robed Pavilion. Nangongzhe's words turned into a roar. When Nangongzhe raised the Heaven's Disaster Sword in his hand, countless disciples of Blood-Robed Pavilion had also stood up. I don't need you to kneel down. Blood-Robed Pavilion will never surrender to anyone. You are my brothers and sisters. Why do you need a reason to fight for your loved ones? The disciples of Blood-Robed Pavilion were excited at this moment. They shouted loudly to the sky, the head is right. We all exist to protect our home. Long live Blood-Robed Pavilion. Long live the head. Long live Blood-Robed Pavilion. Long live the head. Long live Blood-Robed Pavilion. Long live the head. Long live Blood-Robed Pavilion. Chapter 249. Pushing open the door of the Blood-Cloth Pavilion's conference room, Nangongzhe saw Bisui, Aoki, Ho-Tu and Akame were already sitting inside. Akame had almost recovered in the past few days, but because of the battle with Conan, he suffered a lot of injuries so there were still many bandages on his body. Aoki was also a little pale because of Rue Jin's sneak attack on his abdomen. However, the mental state of these few altar masters was still very good. Ever since Akatsuki organization had attacked Blood-Robed Pavilion, the disciples of Blood-Robed Pavilion had also been practicing very diligently. Usually, in the early morning, only the disciples who were responsible for cleaning Blood-Robed Pavilion were walking around, but now many disciples had spontaneously gotten up before the sun had risen, and were practicing martial arts in the training field of Blood-Robed Pavilion. Presumably, the good mental state of the disciples of Bloodcloth Pavilion also encouraged the several altar lords of Bloodcloth Pavilion to a certain extent. Had. Seeing Nangongja came in, the 4 altar lords also stood up and saluted to Nangongja. Their attitude was very respectful, without any arrogance like when Nangongja was a mere figurehead. "You are too polite, please sit down. Bishui should have already given you the information, right?" Nangongja said and glanced at Bishui. Bishui nodded, apparently wanting to tell Nangongja that she had already given the information to other altar lords. Bloodcloth Pavilion has been in seclusion for a long time, although occasionally we receive some tasks to get some money, and at the same time rely on some of our own industries to maintain operations. But the information we can get about the big and small forces in the ninja world is actually very superficial, so a few days ago, I and Bishui carried out a certain amount of information according to the information I know and the information collected by Bishui Altar. Now, in front of you is some information about the current ninja world. I hope you can take a good look. Nangongja was very calm and said to several altar lords. Since their master had already spoken, the few altar masters naturally couldn't afford to be negligent. One by one they opened up the documents in front of them and started reading. From time to time, there would even be a few exclamations. Obviously, they were shocked by the information in front of them. Is this still the information about ninjas that I remember? Since the official establishment of the 5 great shinobi villages and the support of the country, the research in the shinobi villages has made extremely significant progress. Experiments that were originally difficult to carry out because of various resources and environmental restrictions are now in full swing in the 5 great shinobi villages. Although there doesn't seem to be people like Senju Takuma and Uchiha Madara who could shake the shinobi world, the strength of each shinobi village is actually very deep. The current strength of the 5 great shinobi villages is enough to shock people. Originally, the people of Bloodcloak Pavilion thought that the strength of Akatsuki can be said to be the best in the shinobi world. After all, whether it is Konin, Sasori, or Deidara, these people can already be said to be standing at the peak of the shinobi world, but from what Nangongja learned about the strength of Woodleaf, such a comparison is simply the difference between cloud and mud. If Woodleaf can send 1/3 of its strength to fight against Bloodcloak Pavilion will only be defeated faster than the previous attack of Akatsuki. Seeing that the few altar lords seemed to have read through the information in front of them, Nangongja sat up straighter on his seat and said to the few altar lords, "Let's go. Presumably, you already understand how terrifying the world we are facing is, right? In fact, when the 5 great shinobi villages were just established, they were not as powerful as what we see now, but now they have grown into such a behemoth that is difficult to provoke. We actually need to be vigilant enough. Our strength is actually stronger than when the 5 great shinobi villages were established, but the speed of our development is really a bit slow. In the final analysis, it is actually because we have excluded ourselves from the big environment of the shinobi world. Whether it is a ninja or an internal energy cultivator, in fact, we need a variety of battles to temper ourselves, and a variety of medicines to cultivate ourselves. Although our Bloodcloak Pavilion also attaches great importance to this aspect, but it has always been a bit, how to say it. We just stopped maintaining our status quo and lost the idea of enterprising. So I think we can actually imitate the model of the shinobi villages, and secularize ourselves. No longer looking down on others from high above, but increasing our efforts to accept missions from the people to accumulate our wealth and cultivate our own new strength. Take the Emerald Water Altar for example. After ensuring the basic intelligence gathering work, we can accept some assassination missions. Scarlet Flame Altar and Sharp Gold Altar can be used as mercenaries in the shinobi world to accept missions such as expeditions in some small countries. Aoki Altar's medical skills are superb, and unlike the medical ninjas, we can cure patients with some prescriptions, which is our advantage. We can open medical halls in various countries, increasing our economic income, and also provide some necessary basis for Clearwater Altar's operations. As for Thick Earth Altar, we can also accept some guard missions. Such missions not only give us more economic income, but also give us a certain amount of support for other operations. Of course, these are some of my own ideas, and there are definitely a lot of immature places in them. We can discuss it gradually. Nangongja has already thought about the future development direction of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, that is, integrating itself into the shinobi world. Unlike the Ninja Village, which concentrates all their power together and collects money through missions, the Ninja Village is different. Instead, we will follow some of the previous arrangements of the Blood Cloak Pavilion and integrate itself into the whole shinobi world. While making the reputation of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, it will also hide the Blood Cloak Pavilion in the secular world, increasing some security. Aoki pursed his lips and seemed to want to say something. After a few hesitations he said to Nangongja, "I don't know what the head thinks about how to deal with the sharp gold altar. After all, the future layout of the Blood Cloak Pavilion is a long-term thing, and it needs to be planned slowly, but now that the sharp gold altar has lost its leader, such a thing is imminent. If it was before, naturally the next altar master will be elected internally, but after all, Nangongja is in charge now, and it is difficult to determine whether there is anyone in the sharp gold altar who is on the same side as the sharp gold altar, so this problem was raised by Aoki." Chapter 250. Nangongja actually had his own ideas on how to deal with the sharp gold altar. Therefore, although Qingmu thought that he had put the blame on Nangongja, Nangongja did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. In the end, it was because the Blood Cloth Pavilion had formed a situation where the 5 element altars were independent of each other and maintained a certain degree of contact with each other. Whether it was Qingmu or Bai Shui, they were not very clear about some of the internal problems of the sharp gold altar. If they casually pushed a person to the position of altar master of the sharp gold altar now, then it was very likely that some people who were on the same side as sharp gold would coerce the new altar master, causing the new sharp gold to walk on the path of deviating from the Blood Cloth Pavilion. I think. Nangongja's palm kept stroking the handle of his chair. "In my heart, I believe in the sharp gold altar. When a black sheep like sharp gold is removed, the sharp gold altar will definitely be different from what we have seen in the past. It will be like a new life. However, we have to guard against whether there are people in the sharp gold altar who are on the same side as sharp gold. After all, the sharp gold altar is a place that sharp gold has operated for many years. Therefore, the next altar master of the sharp gold altar will be me, the Blood Cloth Pavilion's head. What do you all think?" Nangongja had actually been thinking about taking the sharp gold altar into his own hands for a long time. Although the Blood Cloth Pavilion's head was nominally the highest leader of the Blood Cloth Pavilion, he did not have any power in his own hands. This was not a good sign. If he could keep the sharp gold altar in his hands, it would undoubtedly be a way to secure his position as the head of the head seat. Sharp gold betrayed the Blood Cloth Pavilion and was killed. All the people in the sharp gold altar must be anxious. This time, the Blood Cloth Pavilion's headquarters suffered a huge loss. The people in the other 5 element altars might vent their anger on the sharp gold altar because of sharp gold's actions. Now, if Nangongja became the altar master of the sharp gold altar, no one had the right to gossip. Do you think that the sharp gold altar might betray the Blood Garment Pavilion again? The head of the Blood Cloak Pavilion was the altar master of the acute gold altar. What was the point of betraying himself? Wasn't this a good opportunity for Nangongja to absorb the power of the sharp gold altar into his own hands? Moreover, right now in the Blood Cloth Pavilion, the Emerald Water altar was originally supporting Nangongja. When Nangongja fully grasped the power of the Emerald Metal altar, and with the support of some neutral disciples of the Blood Clothing Pavilion, the Blood Clothing Pavilion became Nangongja's possession. In an organization, using some political means was the most basic behavior. Qingmu, Ho-Tu, and Qi Yan also frowned slightly. Obviously, they were considering the pros and cons of Nangongja's proposal. In fact, who the sharp gold altar fell into did not have much of an impact on the altar masters. However, once the sharp gold altar became a subaltar directly under the head, it was a different story. Their statuses would definitely drop a lot, but Greenwood and the other 2 suddenly realized that they were completely powerless to do anything about it. When the Blood Clothing Pavilion was about to be destroyed, Nangongja appeared and saved the headquarters of the Blood Clothing Pavilion from disaster. Nangongja's timing was too perfect. If the 3 altar masters were not in danger and the sharp gold altar had not revealed the truth of its betrayal, the Blood Clothing Pavilion would have lost a lot of disciples and no one would be able to publicize Nangongja's achievements. However, Nangongja used the right timing and his powerful strength to directly engrave his image in the hearts of every Blood Clothing Pavilion disciple present. This was a seed that would quietly take root and germinate, making everyone begin to recognize Nangongja's superior position in the Blood Clothing Pavilion. We think that the head's proposal is extremely appropriate. After this incident, The sharp gold altar was simply roasted on the fire. It is naturally excellent that the head is willing to help them. Qing Mu, Ho Tu and Qi Yan exchanged glances. Obviously they had already reached a conclusion. Qing Mu stood up and bowed slightly to Nangongzhe. It seemed that he was very grateful to Nangongzhe for saving the sharp gold altar from disaster. Nangongzhe also smiled. No matter whether Qing Mu and the other two agreed with his proposal or not, at least it had been approved in this meeting. After that, it would all depend on Nangongzhe's means to subdue the sharp gold altar. Although the sharp gold altar had been managed by the sharp gold altar for many years, Nangongzhe still believed that he could completely subdue the sharp gold altar. After that, in this meeting room, Nangongzhe and the four altar masters also discussed a lot about the future goals of the blood clothing pavilion and some internal measures. However, these are some ideas that need more time to verify, so we will not talk about them here. Nangongzhe watched Qing Mu, Ho Tu and Qi Yan get up and leave the meeting room one by one. Nangongzhe gave Bai Shui a look, telling her not to leave in a hurry. Obviously he had something to tell her. Bai Shui also quickly understood Nangongzhe's meaning. She still sat in her seat, waiting for Nangongzhe to speak. Although our plan to completely control the blood clothing pavilion has been carried out smoothly, we still have to face many difficulties. I hope that sister can overcome these difficulties with me in the future. When Nangongzhe talked to Bai Shui, he didn't have a very formal and distant demeanor like when he talked to Qing Mu, Aoki and Qi Yan. Instead it was very intimate. When Bai Shui heard Nangongzhe's words, she smiled sweetly and said to Nangongzhe, "That's natural, brother, you and I are of the same bloodline, so naturally we have to help each other." Nangongzhe nodded, then said to Bai Shui with a serious expression, "Don't worry. Although we have successfully repelled the Akatsuki this time, they are still a huge threat after all. This time the Akatsuki only sent 3 core members, and they have already beaten the blood clothing pavilion. We have to continue to monitor the Rain Village and the Akatsuki, and even increase the strength of the original foundation. At the same time, we have to keep an eye on Woodleaf's Uzumaki Naruto and Danzo. Uzumaki Naruto is a member of Woodleaf's Nine Tails column force, and Danzo has a deep hatred with the Akatsuki. As long as we keep an eye on these 2 people, we will have a certain advantage." Chapter 251. Translator. WQL Editor. Alim Naoibo Studio. Nangongzhe opened the door in front of him in a room near the water. A mist unique to the ocean in the early morning poured into the room. This is the 2nd year since Nangongzhe completely took control of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. With the help of Bishui and several other altar lords, the Blood Cloak Pavilion also began to slowly unveil its mysterious veil in front of the world. Many people in the ninja world even regarded the Blood Cloak Pavilion as a mission-receiving agency only under the 5 major ninja villages of the ninja world. Nangongzhe's strategy of secularizing the Blood Cloak Pavilion obviously has unimaginable benefits, and the strength of the Blood Cloak Pavilion has slowly risen in recent years. Nangongzhe naturally also placed his sister, Mashiro Little Linger, Uchiha Fugaku couple, and Yuri Koyuri in the headquarters of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. It stands to reason that Nangongzhe should be in the Blood Cloak Pavilion at this time to deal with all kinds of problems arising from the rapid development of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, but Nangongzhe left the Blood Cloak Pavilion and came to this very remote wave country. Now the place where Nangongzhe is staying is one of the many medical centers opened by the Aoki Temple of the Blood Cloak Pavilion in the wave country. The reason why Nangongzhe came here is naturally because Naruto has become an official ninja not long ago, and he formed a team with Sasuke and Sakura. It really makes people feel like God is playing with them. What's more coincidental is that Hatake Kakashi is the Jonin guiding the 3 of them. It must be Watergate's arrangement, right? Nangongzhe was actually preparing to go directly to the Woodleaf. In the information received by Nangongzhe, he found that the original member of the Akatsuki, Orochimaru, seemed to have some changes. The Odo Geikure established by Orochimaru in the Land of Rice seems to be very unusual during this period of time. Nangongzhe attaches great importance to all the information about the Akatsuki. Although everyone said that Orochimaru defected from the Akatsuki, defecting doesn't make him an enemy, right? With Orochimaru's strength and his almost crazy dedication to research, Nangongzhe felt that Orochimaru must have a certain connection with the Akatsuki. Even in the Odo Geikure village created by Orochimaru, the spies of the Blood Cloak Pavilion found many members of the Akatsuki. So, Nangongzhe came to the Land of Woods ninja to meet with several Woodleaf ninja who had a close relationship with him. Of the ninja, of the ninja world, of the world to the ninja world, to the An of the village. Of the village of the three ninja days of the ninja days of the ninja off the ninja, to the village of the village of ninja the of the village of ninja of the Nangong San. Nangongja casually strolled on the streets of the land of Wave. Suddenly, a ragged man who looked like he didn't have a good life saluted Nangongja and said, "Hello, uncle. A few days ago you came to our Greenwood Hall to prescribe medicine. I don't know if your cold is better?" Nangongja smiled and said to the ragged uncle. The uncle was obviously very happy. He said to Nangongja honestly, "It's much better now. It turns out that our place is very poor. Even the barefoot doctors don't want to come to our poor place. Since the Greenwood Hall was built here a few years ago, they often prescribe medicine for us for free. We are really grateful to you. Nangong-san, please express our gratitude to the head of the Blood Cloak Pavilion on behalf of us poor people." Greenwood Hall was naturally the plan that Nangongja proposed at the meeting to help the Greenwood altar generate income, but later the Blood Cloak Pavilion made some slight adjustments to Greenwood Hall. The current Greenwood Hall was more like a charity organization. While acting as a medical center, Greenwood Hall would occasionally treat some poor people without asking for anything in return. In the beginning, the Blood Cloak Pavilion naturally spent a lot of money in such a charity organization, but later, the poor people who received free treatment from Greenwood Hall spontaneously promoted the Blood Cloak Pavilion behind Greenwood Hall. This was also the reason why the Blood Cloak Pavilion could quickly become famous in the ninja world. That's natural. If there is a chance, I will definitely express my gratitude to the head of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Nangongja smiled at the uncle. The loveliest and most pitiful people in the world are always such ordinary people who are struggling to survive at the bottom of society but don't dare to violate the boundary of the law. "Uncle, do you know anything about Uncle Danas? He has been in the Woodleaf for almost a month. He should be back by now." In the Wave Country, almost no one didn't know Danas. He was a stubborn old man. In the face of the economic blockade from Kato, the people of the Wave Country became more and more poor, but Danas was willing to put his life on the opposite side of Kato. With an insufficient salary, he went to the Woodleaf to find a ninja in the Woodleaf to protect him until the completion of the Wave Country Bridge. Fortunately, he met a team like Kakashi and Naruto, otherwise, Danas might have been left behind on the way back to the Wave Country. Nangongja stayed in the Woodleaf for a long time. If he met a ninja with a bad temper, no one would say anything even if he directly cut Danas into pieces. Just as the abject uncle was about to say something, a small dock in the Wave Nation became noisy. A lot of people surrounded the pier, but no one dared to step forward. The position of the pier was empty. It seems that Danas is back? Nangongja naturally understood Danas' situation. Everyone in the Wave Country supported Danas in their hearts. But no matter how much he supported Danas in his heart, he didn't dare to show it. Because as long as he confirmed the close relationship between him and Danas, it was simply putting his neck under the knife of a dictatorial businessman like Kato. Not many people will do something that endangers their life when they are forced into a desperate situation. Nangongja went to the back of the crowd and stretched out his hand to ask the people in front of him to make way for him. After the people in front of Nangongja saw Nangongja's face, they all respectfully called Mr. Nangong and made way for him. Nangongja quickly reached the innermost circle and saw the unconscious Kakashi on the boat, as well as the anxious Naruto and others. After taking a few steps forward, Nangongja came to their side. "Mr. Nangong. Uncle Nangong. To Nangong-sensei." The few of them praised Nangongja in such a manner. Chapter 252. Danas looked at the three children, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura in surprise. Along the way, everyone had experienced a lot of things, so they had a certain degree of understanding of each other. The three children had lived in Woodleaf Village since they were young, but they actually knew a person in a clinic in their own country? Wasn't it obvious that Nangongja was from Woodleaf? Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke were also very surprised. Since Nangongja left Woodleaf a few years ago, there was no news about Nangongja at all. Although the three of them knew that with Nangongja's strength, he would definitely not encounter any danger. But after all, Nangongja was a close person to them. Even if they knew that nothing would happen to him, they still couldn't help but worry about his safety. But no one expected that this familiar person who they hadn't seen for several years would actually appear at their mission destination. It was really a pleasant surprise. Uncle Nangong, Kakashi-sensei fought with a fierce-looking guy without eyebrows before. In order to protect us, he fell into a coma after the battle. Uncle Nangong, can you help us save Kakashi-sensei? Naruto looked at Nangongja and suddenly remembered that when he was young, Nangongja could light up his hand with a green light once he was injured. His wound would be healed immediately. Now that he saw Nangongja, he naturally hoped that Nangongja could help him save Kakashi. When Danas heard Naruto's words, he also looked at Nangongja with a hopeful face. Although he knew that Nangongja was actually from Woodleaf, Nangongja had never shown his strength in front of him. This ninja named Kakashi defeated the powerful ninja named Momochi Zabuza. If Nangongja could save Kakashi, it would be the best thing. Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura, don't worry. I'll check on Kakashi first to see what's going on. Nangongja smiled and said to Naruto and the others. Then he took a few steps forward and walked to Kakashi, who was lying in the boat. He put his hand on Kakashi's wrist, and a strand of internal force sneaked into the meridians of Kakashi's hand. The internal force flowed along the meridians in Kakashi's body a few times, and Nangongja also opened his closed eyes. It's okay, Kakashi just consumed a little too much energy. Rest well for a period of time and then take some medicine and you will be able to recover. Nangongja said to Naruto and the others with a smile, then he waved his hand. You guys help me carry Kakashi to Aokitang. The environment there is better, and it is convenient for me to observe Kakashi's situation at any time. Hearing Nangongja's words, Naruto and Sasuke also came to Kakashi's side. Each of them grabbed one of Kakashi's arms and helped Kakashi up. Following Nangongja's footsteps, they walked to the door of Aokitang, a medical hall set up by Aokitang in the country of Wave. A strong medicinal fragrance came from the medical hall. Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura all frowned slightly. After all, the smell of Chinese medicine was not so good. Naruto looked at Nangongja with an unhappy face and said, Uncle Nangong, what is this smell? Smells so bad. Cough cough. As he spoke, Naruto actually coughed, which was really funny. This is the smell of decocting medicine. Not everyone can afford a rare number of medical ninjas. This herb is used by ordinary people to treat diseases. Woodleaf contains purified tablets and pills. Naturally, you have not smelled this smell, so naturally you are not so used to it. Naruto and Sasuke didn't say anything. They nodded casually and left this matter behind. But Sakura seemed to have been thinking about something. Along the way, Sakura was almost taken care of by Naruto and Sasuke. Even when fighting with Zabuza, Sakura could only guard Sakura from the back, which made Sakura feel very useless. When Nangongja talked about such medical methods and medical ninjas, Sakura also felt that she should work hard in this direction. Of course, these were some of Sakura's own conjectures, and she hasn't really understood it yet. The sun sets in the west and the moon rises in the east. Time passed so quickly. In the blink of an eye, the sun in the sky had already set in the west, and a round jade plate was hanging in the sky like a sparkling crystal. Cough cough. Kakashi was lying on the bed and suddenly coughed. After a while he opened his eyes. Looking at the strange ceiling and some bandages on his body, Kakashi naturally knew that he was brought to the Wave Country by Naruto and received some treatment. Although he was also very puzzled in his heart that there was such a standard medical center in a poor country like the Wave Country, but now that he was in a safe place, Kakashi also relaxed a little. Oh, Kakashi, have you already woken up? I thought you would sleep for a while. A slightly surprised voice sounded. Kakashi felt that it was familiar, so he tilted his head and saw a familiar figure holding a tray with a bowl of porridge on it. Nangongja? Kakashi said with some doubts. Although Nangongja stayed in the Woodleaf for a long time, Kakashi was active as an Umbu ninja in the Umbu department. Naturally, he rarely went home. Nangongja also lived in seclusion. The two lived very close to each other, but they didn't meet each other. Later, when Kakashi knew that Nangongja had returned, Nangongja had already left the Woodleaf, so naturally, they didn't have the opportunity to meet. He didn't expect that after Nangongja left the Woodleaf for nearly 2 years, the two could meet again. Speaking of which, Kakashi, you haven't been doing well in these years. A rebellious ninja in the water country forced you to this point. At the beginning, I said that I hope you can inherit White Fang Senpai's kenjutsu. Well, I don't know if you heard me or not. Nangongja casually sat on Kakashi's bed and handed the porridge in his hand to Kakashi. As if he was teaching his disobedient younger brother, he said this to Kakashi from the beginning. Chapter 253. After hearing Nangongja's words, Kakashi didn't feel uncomfortable in his heart. After all, compared to himself, Nangongja was more like his father's disciple. Although Nangongja didn't learn Hataki Jutsu, his father has always tried his best to guide Nangongja. Nangongja can be said to have a deep relationship with Hataki Jutsu. He and Nangongja can be regarded as brothers, so Nangongja didn't say anything about him. How could it be? I did decide to use the eye given to me by Obito to witness the changes in the world, but after talking with you before, I didn't relax my Hataki Jutsu. When I fought with Zabuza, I knew that I could defeat him without using Hataki Jutsu. I also determined that Zabuza was dead, so I deliberately fell into a coma to sharpen these children. Kakashi said with a serious face as if he wanted to prove that what he said was true. However, Nangongja stretched out his hand and pressed on Kakashi's wound. In an instant, Kakashi began to grimace, and even the porridge in his hand almost fell. Look at you. How dare you say that you've calculated everything clearly? However, Nangongja obviously didn't intend to entangle with Kakashi for too long on this issue. Instead, he asked Kakashi, "Are you sure you didn't kill him?" Of course, his throat was directly pierced by a Sinbon. Then he was killed by the Umbu of the Mist. While talking, Kakashi's face also had a trace of doubt. The Umbu recovered the body of a ninja? But which Umbu would directly take away the whole body of a ninja? It seems that you have figured it out. When I and Naruto learned about the situation, I heard them say that the Umbu of the Mist took away all the body of Zabuza. I felt that there was something strange about it. It seems that this Zabuza still left himself a way out and he won't die so easily. Nangongja also looked at Kakashi and said, "This is really troublesome." Although Kakashi was wearing a mask, Nangongja could still clearly see the expression on Kakashi's face at the moment. Zabuza will definitely come back, but now the injuries on my body and the overdraft of my spiritual power can't be healed in a short time. I still have to find some ways to protect the smooth construction of the Wave Country Bridge. While talking, Kakashi's gaze turned to Nangongja, who was sitting on his side. This person is much more powerful than himself. Wouldn't it be a waste if they didn't make good use of such a powerful force? Hey, don't look at me. This battle and this mission belong to you. All I can guarantee is that during this time, I will try my best to make your injuries heal faster. Don't think about me doing other things. You should know what my relationship with Woodleaf is. I have no obligation to help you perform the mission. Kakashi, as a fourth-generation disciple, naturally knew some things about Nangongja and Woodleaf. Nangongja didn't want to help him defeat Zabuza. This matter must have been settled. Moreover, for Kakashi, he actually hoped that he could defeat Zabuza himself. If he didn't defeat Zabuza, presumably Kakashi's heart would be very uncomfortable. But Nangongja's words turned, "Naruto's 3 children, I can still help you train them. At the beginning, I just helped Naruto and Sakura lay some foundation. As for Sasuke, I only taught some concepts and thoughts about swordsmanship. Now that it has been so long, they are still so weak. It really hurts my face. So, these few disciples of yours, I will help you train them well." When Kakashi heard Nangongja's words, he also looked embarrassed. He was indeed a little lazy before, and he didn't teach Naruto any combat skills. When he fought with Zabuza before, the level of taijutsu displayed by Naruto and Sasuke also surprised Kakashi. But since they were taught by Nangongja, it naturally made sense. Then I will leave it to you. These children are actually very talented, but their hearts are not so serious. If you can help me teach them, it would be great. If Zabuza really comes later, I think he can also play some role. Okay, then you take a rest. I will arrange for some medicine to be sent to you regularly to treat mental overdraft and recuperate the body. You don't have to worry about those children. I will help you train them well. Nangongja waved his hand and said to Kakashi. Nangongja's face had a very strange smile. Kakashi, who had been with Nangongja for so long, naturally knew some of Nangongja's bad taste. Was my decision to let Nangongja teach Naruto and the others a bit too hasty? Kakashi secretly asked himself, but he quickly threw these thoughts to the back of his mind. Anyway, he did not become Nangongja's plaything. Naruto and the others had to bear the bitterness of growing up. After thinking about this, Kakashi put the bowl of porridge in his hand that had been finished on the small cabinet next to him. Nangongja and Kakashi were still talking just now. He did not see Kakashi take off his mask. When did he finish this bowl of porridge? Nangongja walked out of the room where Kakashi rested, and also called Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, the 3 children. I discussed with Kakashi before and thought that maybe Zabuza did not die, but was rescued by someone who pretended to be an Umbu. Once Zabuza recovered from his injuries, he will definitely come back here to stop the Wave Country from building the bridge. So, I will train you for a period of time in the future so that your combat ability will be improved. Hearing Nangongja's words, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura's faces became extremely strange in an instant. It was an expression of joy and sadness. The three of them were trained by Nangongzhi. Naturally, they were very clear about how much benefit Nangongzhi's training could bring to them, but every time Nangongzhi trained people, he always came up with a lot of bad ideas, which made them very uncomfortable. Chapter 254. The next day. Taeyang was still sleeping comfortably in his bed. It was only 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and the sky was almost dark. Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke were all neatly dressed and standing at the door of Aokido, checking their equipment and waiting for Nangongzhi to guide their practice. However, they were a group of 11 or 12 years old children, so it was inevitable that they would still be a little sleepy after getting up so early. Naruto couldn't help but complain, "What is Nangong uncle doing? He asked us to gather so early but he hasn't come yet. If I knew earlier, I would have slept in bed for 10 more minutes before getting up, so that I could rest for a while." Although Sakura didn't speak, anyone with a discerning eye could see the bitterness in her eyes. Sakura actually had a little complaint. Now that Naruto said what he wanted to say, he silently praised himself in his heart. Sasuke glanced at Naruto, who was complaining, and said coldly, "Fool." As a person who often asked himself to get up early to exercise, Sasuke actually performed much better than Naruto and Sakura. Nangongzhi had trained Sasuke before. Unlike Sakura and Naruto's basic training, Nangongzhi's training for Sasuke was much stricter. Not to mention getting up early in the morning, even if there was no way to rest for several days in a row, such things had happened before. It was precisely because of this experience that Sasuke understood the benefits that Nangongzhi's training could bring him. "Sasuke, what are you talking about, you arrogant guy? Don't think that I didn't see that you just yawned behind our backs." Naruto looked at Sasuke with a smirk, as if he was grabbing Sasuke's pigtail. Hearing Naruto's words, Sakura also secretly looked at Sasuke with her eyes, as if she was hoping to see Sasuke yawning. But then Sakura looked at Naruto with an angry face and said, "Naruto, what are you talking about? How could Sasuke do such a rude thing? I think it's you who did it." Sakura was secretly excited in her heart. Hey, I helped Sasuke to smooth things over, I must have left a good impression on him." This kind of behavior would score very high in Xiao Ying's eyes. Just when the children seemed to quarrel again, Nangongzhi's voice sounded behind them. "Looks like you guys are in good spirits. I thought you guys would be sleepy since you woke up so early. But since you're already so energetic, then I have nothing to worry about. Let's start training now." Seeing Nangongzhi coming from behind them, Naruto was puzzled. "Uncle, why did you come from there?" "It's nothing, I went to the place where you will be training in advance to help you arrange it. It's convenient for our training in a while." Nangongzhi smiled and looked very kind. But Naruto felt that something was wrong. Arranged in advance? Didn't that mean that they would have to face all kinds of traps set up by their uncle, who was full of bad taste? This was really not good. If it weren't for Nangongzhi looking at him, Naruto wanted to run away now. Nangongzhi waved his hand and motioned the children to go with him. With the speed of a ninja, they quickly arrived in the forest of the wave country far away from the coast. "I don't practice chakra, so if you want me to teach you how to use ninjutsu, don't even think about it. But whether it's chakra or the internal force that I practice, it's actually a kind of energy. What I want to teach you is to control the energy in your body, so that you can use the least amount of energy to achieve the best effect." Nangongzhi said, and he had already walked in front of a big tree. Ninjas often achieve the effect of controlling the energy in their body through some training. Although my internal force is very different from chakra, it's common in some places. For example, like now. While Nangongzhi was talking to Naruto, his feet had already stepped on the trunk of the tree. At the bottom of Nangongzhi's shoes, an imperceptible internal force was attached to it. Nangongzhi's body directly stood vertically on the trunk as if it was free from gravity. "I use internal force to achieve this effect. It will cause a lot of consumption, so I usually don't do this. But chakra still has its own advantages in this regard, so this training method is suitable for you. You can give it a try." That's right, Nangongzhi wants to teach Naruto, one of the more practical skills of a ninja, tree climbing. Nangongzhi only helped Naruto, Sakura, and taught Sasuke about swordsmanship. This kind of energy control practice is the first time for him, so naturally he has to start with the most basic tree climbing. With that, Nangongzhi hung his whole body on a branch, and began to slowly explain to Naruto some of the precautions and energy use methods of tree climbing. Naruto, Sasuke were all confused and didn't know whether they understood or not. Nangongzhi jumped down from the trunk, went to the side, and took out his own green jade gourd, as if waiting for Naruto and Sasuke to practice by themselves. Looking at Nangongja's appearance, Naruto and Sasuke naturally knew that they couldn't count on Nangongja to teach them such practice step by step. So they stood in the same place, closed their eyes and seemed to be thinking about what Nangongja just said. Finally, Sakura was the first to open her eyes, but found that whether it was Naruto or Sasuke, both of them still closed their eyes and pondered. In her eyes, there was an irrepressible joy. Sure enough, I have my own outstanding points. Sakura looked at Nangongja, who was sitting under a tree and drinking wine by himself, and secretly encouraged herself in her heart. She must let Uncle Nangong see her power. She walked to a relatively tall tree, and very carefully attached her chakra to her feet. Sakura tentatively stepped on the trunk with her feet, and well, the point of force was very stable. Sakura's legs exerted force, and her whole body was almost standing on the trunk almost vertically. Although Naruto and Sasuke already had a certain idea in their hearts, now that they saw Sakura starting to try, they naturally turned their eyes to Sakura. Even Nangongja had already quietly looked at Sakura's movements with his own eyes. Chapter 255. Unsurprisingly, Sakura's first attempt ended in failure. Sakura was actually very serious in controlling her chakra, but suddenly a gust of wind blew past her. The morning wind was naturally a little cold, and Sakura couldn't help but shiver, and goosebumps appeared all over her body. Such a change naturally made Sakura's careful control of chakra instantly become unstable. Too much chakra directly stepped on the trunk, and Sakura lost her balance and fell to the ground. She rubbed her butt on the ground. The burning sensation of her butt being smashed into 8 pieces made Xiaoying involuntarily recall the feeling of being spanked by her mother when she was disobedient when she was young. This was really a different approach to achieve the same result. Turning her head to look at Naruto and Sasuke, Sakura instantly felt bad. Sasuke was still able to control his emotions, but looking at Naruto's appearance, that kind of distorted face was simply trying to hold back his laughter, but he couldn't hold it in any longer. Disgusting. Sakura glanced at Naruto and said very angrily to Naruto. Naruto was also a little stunned by Sakura's scolding. How did I offend Sakura? I obviously tried so hard to give Sakura face and tried so hard to hold back my laughter, but now I have to continue to be scolded? Just as he was about to talk back, Sakura went to the side of the tree and prepared to continue climbing. Naruto could only close his eyes in anger, and continue to think about some of the climbing skills that Nangongja just said. Don't know how long it took. Naruto was sleepy and there was a big snot bubble hanging on his nose. With Naruto's inhalation and exhalation, it was constantly expanding and shrinking. Just when Naruto was still sleeping, thinking very seriously, a scream went into Naruto's ears. Obviously it was Sakura's scream. The snot bubble on Naruto's nose burst in an instant, and Naruto directly jumped up from his cross-legged state. What's wrong? What's wrong? Is Zabuza here? Naruto asked anxiously, but looking around he didn't see Zabuza at all. Nangongja was still sitting under a tree and drinking by himself. Sasuke had also begun to practice climbing trees by himself, but Sakura sat on the ground. Whether it was her clothes or hair, they were a little wet and some of her hair was still dripping with water. Moving the time forward a few minutes. After many attempts, Sakura finally stood next to the tree crown with her own efforts. Looking at Sasuke, who was still working hard under another tree, and Naruto, who seemed to have fallen asleep, Sakura's heart couldn't help but have a little bit of pride. Although she didn't play a big role on the way to the wave country, but now such a training, whether it was Naruto who was at the bottom of her class or Sasuke who had always been outstanding, they were not as good as her. Her girlish temperament naturally made Sakura feel very happy. But just when Sakura was still happy, she didn't know that a lot of water was splashed, and it directly drenched Sakura from head to toe. Even the wind in this forest couldn't bear the loneliness, and a small wind blew, directly making Sakura feel extremely cold. Naturally, under such circumstances, Sakura also lost precise control of chakra under her feet, and directly fell from the tree crown to the ground. That soreness far exceeded the feeling he had when he had only climbed halfway before falling down. It seemed that she had gradually recovered. Sakura limped to Nangongja's side. She directly stretched out her fist and directly hammered Nangongja's head. But after all, Nangongja's strength was there, and when Sakura's fist was about to hit Nangongja's body, Nangongja relied on his own speed to dodge Sakura's punch. You bastard, what are you doing? I am a girl. How can you treat me like this? Sakura looked at her soaked clothes and dripping wet hair, and forgot to use honorifics, and directly shouted at Nangongja. So scary, so scary. The current Xiao Ying was almost exactly the same as when she had angered Xiao Ying to the point of anger. Naruto could only cover his eyes and desperately told himself that this Sakura wasn't the cutest girl he liked the most, but a stranger. I am good enough to you if you don't believe me? Nangongja looked at Sakura's angry face, and he was very happy as if his prank was successful with a strange smile on his face. Looking at the direction Nangongja's finger was pointing, Sasuke had climbed almost 2/3 of the way to the tree trunk. Suddenly a few shurikens flew towards Sasuke. If such an attack was on the ground, Sasuke would have hundreds of ways to deal with it, but he was on a tree trunk after all, so he couldn't do it so easily. So Sasuke could only withdraw the chakra under his feet so that he could avoid the shurikens shooting towards him. Sakura looked at Nangongja and she couldn't help but mutter to herself, "Nangong-san, you are actually a hidden sadist, right?" Nangongja acted like he didn't hear Sakura's words clearly, and he dug his ears and said to Sakura, "Sakura, what did you say? Uncle's ears seemed to be uncomfortable just now, so I didn't hear it clearly. Can you say it again? This time. Uncle will definitely do it. Fine. Listen." Looking at Nangongja's smiling face, Sakura only felt a chill coming from her body. This kind of chill was more piercing than being soaked and blown by the wind, so Sakura could only stiffly squeeze out a smile on her face and said to Nangongja, "Nothing, Uncle Nangong-san. I was just encouraging myself, and I must not disappoint Uncle's trust. I'm going to climb the tree now." Naruto looked at Nangongja and Sakura, and thought about the attack that Sasuke faced just now. Will I have to face such difficulties and tricks when I climb the tree later? No. This world is so scary. At this time, Nangongja suddenly picked up a stone from the ground, and with a flick of his finger, it directly hit Naruto's forehead. "How is it? You've been thinking for so long, why don't you climb the tree? If you can't complete this training, Uncle will take good care of you." Naruto touched his swollen forehead, and looked at the sky with a hopeless expression. His face that was looking at the sky at a 45-degree angle seemed to be lamenting the horror and injustice of this world. Chapter 256. Boom. The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground sounded. Naruto rubbed his butt and looked at the big tree in front of him with a sad expression. After Sakura was tricked by Nangongja, it was obvious that she was more vigilant in her heart. It didn't take long for her to be able to walk on the big tree skillfully and avoid some of the small traps set by Nangongja. Even Sasuke, after climbing the tree many times, was able to avoid the shurikens that were shot at him and stood on the tip of the big tree smoothly. Am I really not as good as Sakura and Sasuke? Was he really at the bottom of the pack? Naruto didn't want to bear such a name, but he could only climb half of the tree, and the chakra in his body would go out of control. Naruto's body now had not only half of the Nine Tails chakra, but the entire Nine Tails was sealed in his body. Even if some of the chakra escaped from the seal in his body, it would have a great impact on Naruto's control of chakra. "Hey, idiot. It's dark, let's go back. You can't practice tree climbing in a hurry, just come back tomorrow." Sasuke stood beside Naruto and said to Naruto. Although his tone seemed to be very disdainful of Naruto, it was obvious that Sasuke also cared about Naruto in his own way. Everyone had something they were good at, but they also had their own shortcomings. Naruto's talent in taijutsu was obvious to all. Even if the progress of tree climbing was not so smooth, it didn't matter. Sasuke also understood Naruto's slightly delicate and sensitive mood, so he opened his mouth to persuade Naruto. Hearing Sasuke's words, Naruto seemed very happy. After getting along with Sasuke for so long, Naruto was also very clear about Sasuke's awkward behavior. Although Sasuke's temperament has changed a lot after being guided by Nangongja, after all, it was a person's way of doing things, so it didn't change much. His partner comforted him, which made Naruto feel very happy. With a bright smile on his face, he said to Sasuke, "It's okay, Sasuke, you go back first. Tell Uncle Nangong that I need to practice a little more. I must let Uncle Nangong see the world, hee." Hearing Naruto's words, Naruto's face was swept away. Sasuke also felt relieved, but he still turned to Naruto and said, "Don't worry. I don't care, just remember to go back." After that, Sasuke sway, Naruto looked at Sasuke's back and smiled, then he turned his eyes to the big tree in front of him again. His eyes became firm again, Naruto carefully controlled the chakra in his body and attached it to his feet, and once again began to fight with the big tree in front of him. He couldn't remember how many times he tried to climb this big tree, he only remembered that he rushed towards the big tree again and again, and from time to time, some shurikens flew towards him. In the end, even the shuriken's attack was gone. Presumably he didn't know how many times he tried, but the shurikens set by Uncle Nangong had been exhausted. Naruto became very happy because of such a thing. Even Uncle Nangong didn't expect him to persist to this point, right? Finally, Naruto climbed to the top of the big tree. Naruto was just about to walk in the direction of Greenwood Hall, but the soreness and fatigue on his body finally defeated his firm will. The moment before Naruto fainted, he was still silently imagining the expression of Uncle Nangong when he saw that he had completed the training. The night passed like this, the morning dew condensed on Naruto's body on the ground. A woman with long black hair wearing a kimono unknowingly came to Naruto's side. The woman's pair of black eyes kept wandering around the forehead protector on Naruto's forehead and his neck. But in the end, she shook her head as if to expel the distracting thoughts in her heart. She gently squatted beside Naruto, stretched out her tender white jade-like palm, and gently patted Naruto's face. A gentle and ethereal voice came from the woman's mouth. "Don't worry. Little brother, wake up. Who would catch a cold here? It's better to go home quickly." Naruto seemed to feel that someone was calling him. He tried hard to open his eyes, only to see a very beautiful girl squatting beside him and looking at him. The morning light seemed to turn into beautiful ribbons against the morning mist, revealing the beauty of the woman in front of him. "Sister?" Naruto didn't know the girl in front of him, but he still opened his mouth and said. Hearing Naruto's address, the girl seemed to be a little happy, her mouth curved into a beautiful arc like the sun, making people's heart feel very warm. "Little brother, why did you fall asleep in the forest so early?" The girl seemed to be a little puzzled and said to Naruto. "Meh. I'm completing the training. After the training I can become stronger." Naruto scratched his head and seemed to be a little embarrassed to say to the girl. But the determination to become stronger in his eyes was so obvious, his pair of eyes instantly turned into a bright and dazzling gem. "But little brother, aren't you already very strong? Why do you have to train so hard?" The girl's question seemed to have caught Naruto's attention. In Naruto's mind, he suddenly remembered his mother's tired face in order to protect him when he was a child. Naruto opened his mouth and said to the girl, "In order to protect the people I care about the most, I will definitely become stronger." Hearing Naruto's words, the girl's eyes became sharp in an instant. "The people I care about?" The girl's eyes swept through the 2 bags of herbs in her hands that she bought from Greenwood Hall. "That's right, I must protect the people I care about the most. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will not hesitate." The girl stood up from her squatting position, tidied up her kimono with her hands and smiled at Naruto and said, "I believe that you will become strong enough to protect everything you want to protect. After all, your current resolute heart is the most powerful force for you." Naruto seemed to want to say something, but the girl had already turned around and walked far away. Naruto also shook off the morning dew on his body and hurriedly walked in the direction of Greenwood Hall, wanting to tell his Uncle Nangong that he had completed the training. Chapter 257. Nangongja looked at the account book in front of him. Previously, a girl came to the Greenwood Hall and bought a lot of herbs. Although there were many kinds of herbs, the staff in the medical hall found that most of them were used to treat internal and external injuries. So he didn't dare to delay and reported this news to Nangongja. Nangongja actually had a guess in his heart. This girl must be with Zabuza, who was injured by Kakashi and faked his death. But since this was Kakashi's task, Nangongja was too lazy to intervene. He let Kakashi solve it himself. Uncle, I finished the training." When Nangongja was still thoughtfully flipping through the account book in front of him, Naruto's voice had already come from afar. After a while, Naruto had already arrived in front of Nangongja. His eyes were a little red and swollen and there were some dark circles. His head was covered with morning dew, and there were some grass clippings on his body. But Naruto's spirit was excellent. His bright smile seemed to make Nangongja's mood better. "It's good that you're back. Hurry up and change your clothes and take a shower. You must be tired after working hard for a night." For Nangongja, Naruto was like his own nephew. Seeing that Naruto could cultivate so hard, Nangongja was actually very gratified in his heart. So he said to Naruto very gently, "I got it, uncle." Naruto responded and walked inside the Greenwood Hall. Apparently, he listened to Nangongja's suggestion and was ready to have a good rest. Not long after Naruto left, Kakashi had already walked out of the inner hall. Nangongja also saw Kakashi's figure. Since Kakashi could walk out, it was naturally not a big problem. "How is your recovery?" Nangongja asked Kakashi. "There is no problem with my body. After 1 or 2 days of rest, my strength will be completely recovered." At that time, I will go to the bridge construction site with Danas to protect them during the bridge construction. Kakashi moved his legs as if he wanted to prove that he had almost recovered. Then he told Nangongja his plan. Since you have already planned it, then I naturally have nothing to say. Solve the problem here as soon as possible and I will go back to Woodleaf with you. There is some news that I want to tell Watergate personally. Nangongja did not elaborate on what news he wanted to tell Watergate, but it was definitely something important. Therefore, Kakashi's face became serious and said to Nangongja, "In that case I will help them complete the bridge construction as soon as possible. When the time comes we will go back to Woodleaf together. Yabuki and some other people have been waiting for you to go back to Woodleaf." Kakashi obviously knew Sakura's mother, Yabuki, so he said this to Nangongja. Kakashi's words were actually to let Nangongja go back to Woodleaf with peace of mind. Nangongja also nodded and did not comment on Kakashi's suggestion. Seeing that Nangongja did not intend to express his intentions, Kakashi did not say much, but returned to the inner hall. It seemed that he wanted to train his 3 disciples again. Time passed quickly. When Kakashi fully recovered, he took Sasuke and Sakura to the bridge under construction. Naruto was left behind by Kakashi to take care of Dana's daughter and grandson. Maybe it's because Nangong Zetsu reminded Naruto about the nature of Gato, who hired Zabuza, and the relationship between Naruto and Dana's son Z. The bridge's construction period has reached the final stage, and the bridge can be completely built and put into use. Dana's weathered face couldn't help but smile. His motherland was finally saved. But a thick fog quickly shrouded the place where Kakashi and Dana's were. This unusually thick fog made Kakashi and Dana's involuntarily think of Zabuza who attacked them in the forest. "Sakura? You follow Uncle Dana's and protect his safety. Sasuke and I are ready to face the enemy. Zabuza is coming." Sakura and Sasuke reacted quickly. One of them hurriedly went to Dana's side and pulled out a kunai from the ninja tool bag behind him and held it in his hand. He looked around him very vigilantly. Sasuke also went to Kakashi's side and was ready to fight. Woodleaf cloning ninja Kakashi, last time was the first time I encountered such a tricky Kekkei Genkai like Sharingan, and you were lucky enough to win. This time I will definitely take the life of the old man Danas, and also take the lives of several of your disciples and yourself. A slightly ethereal voice came from the thick fog, and Kakashi also looked serious, revealing his eyes covered by the forehead protector. The Scarlet 3 Tomo Sharingan seemed to exude a light that even the mist concealment jutsu couldn't block. Everyone can boast. My life, my disciple's life and my client's life are all at stake here. If you're really as powerful as you say, why don't you try to see if you can do what you've said? That's right. Kakashi said with some contempt, but his serious eyes showed that he had already regarded Zabuza as his enemy. The sound of a sharp weapon cutting through the air came, and Sasuke quickly shot the Senbon that was shot towards him to the ground. A figure with a mist umbu mask appeared in front of everyone. His hand movements were obviously telling Kakashi that these Senbon were shot by him. Are you out of practice? Zabuza's bandaged figure emerged from the thick fog, and he looked at the masked figure standing beside him with some blame. No, Zabuza-sama. I deliberately tested this person's skill. Now it seems that it's just SOSO. I will take him down soon. Haku's ethereal voice also reached Sasuke's ears, and a touch of anger floated from Sasuke's eyes. Sasuke had his own pride, and being insulted like this made Sasuke feel very angry. But such anger didn't make Sasuke lose control, instead, it made him more serious. I must let this person who looked down on me know what kind of power I, a person who doesn't seem to have any ability in his eyes, have. Chapter 258. Just when Sasuke was secretly planning to let Haku see his strength, Haku's figure was in a trance in Sasuke's eyes. His figure instantly blurred, and Sasuke felt a cold feeling behind his head, so he quickly jumped forward. While jumping forward, Sasuke's body also turned around, and a kunai shot out from Sasuke's hand. That's right, it was Haku who appeared behind Sasuke. After Haku shot down Sasuke's kunai with his Senbon, he said to Sasuke with some appreciation, "Haku, Sasuke. You've really grown a lot." When Zabuza ambushed Danas in the forest, Haku had been observing from the side, so he had his own considerations for Sasuke. Sasuke's current level was obviously higher than what he saw before. Woodleaf Ninja sure enough had a very good foundation. After receiving appropriate training, their strength will improve significantly. But this was still not enough. Haku put one hand on his chest, and the other hand kept blocking Sasuke's shuriken. A cold and ethereal voice sounded in Sasuke's ear. Ice release, 1,000 flying water kill. When Haku's voice sounded, a mass of water floated in front of Haku, and it quickly turned into slender icicles that shot towards Sasuke. Sasuke kept shooting kunai just now in the hope that Haku could use ninjutsu. After all, he was just a genin. If a ninjutsu duel really started, Sasuke's strength would not be Haku's opponent. But once the most basic taijutsu battle starts, with Sasuke's taijutsu and kenjutsu from Nangongja, Sasuke still has hope of winning. Kakashi watched Haku complete the hand seals with one hand, and even launched a difficult ninjutsu. He was very surprised. Ninjutsu with one hand? Kakashi had seen ninjutsu without seals, but it was the first time for him to see Haku complete the hand seals and launch ninjutsu with one hand. When Zabuza saw Kakashi's astonishment, he smiled disdainfully and said to Kakashi, "You still have the time to pay attention to other battles? With your disciple's strength, I will be able to take him down very quickly. Instead of worrying about your disciple's safety, you might as well worry about yourself because your life is in my hands." After saying this sentence, Zabuza's figure disappeared from Kakashi's line of sight. Even though Kakashi was very careful about his surroundings, he still couldn't detect Zabuza's figure and aura. This is Zabuza's specialty, silent killing technique. Kakashi seemed to be aware of something. He threw the shuriken in his hand to his left, but suddenly, Zabuza's figure appeared behind Kakashi. He raised his huge beheading sword and slashed towards Kakashi. Feeling the threat from behind, Kakashi quickly bent his body and dodged in front of him. Zabuza's sword almost fell on Kakashi's body. With a cruel smile on his face, Zabuza once again blended into the thick fog. His ethereal voice once again passed into Kakashi's ears. "Ah, ah, ah. This time you are lucky to be able to avoid my attack. But you can avoid it once or twice, but can you guarantee that you will never make any mistakes? Once you make a mistake, your life will be taken by me, and everything you have will become an undead whose name will be pulled out of this ninja manual in my hand." The battle between ninjas is not only closely related to personal strength, but also the confrontation between the minds of each other. This was Zabuza's style. He constantly pressured his opponent with his words, and then used his dense murderous aura to attack his opponent's mind. When his opponent's mind was distracted, it was the moment he took his opponent's life. Facing Zabuza's silent killing technique, Kakashi actually couldn't think of a way to break the situation for a while. He could only stabilize his mind and try his best to resist the attack from Zabuza. In fact, Sasuke's current situation is not so good, because Haku's speed is a bit too fast. While his figure is constantly flickering, there will be senbonzen shooting towards him, and the angles are very tricky. Even if Sasuke has tried his best to resist the senbonzen shooting towards him, he still suffered some injuries. Although it is not fatal, it also greatly affects Sasuke's flexibility. Let me end the battle as soon as possible, and then help Zabuza-sama to defeat Hatake Kakashi. Haku looked at Sasuke, but in fact his mind has drifted to Kakashi, who is fighting with Zabuza. After all, Kakashi's strength is obvious to all, and Zabuza can now suppress Kakashi with the advantage of the environment. But once this famous wood-leaf ninja thinks of a way to break the situation, Zabuza's life will become very dangerous. Therefore Haku decided to solve this kid in front of him as soon as possible, and then help Zabuza-sama. Both hands were placed on his chest, and for the first time Haku began to use both hands to make hand seals. Sasuke's heart was alert. After all, Haku just used one hand to cast ninjutsu, and he was already suppressed. Now that Haku began to use both hands to make hand seals, he must cast a powerful ninjutsu that surpasses the previous ninjutsu, so Sasuke was also very vigilant to look around him. Both hands were placed in front of him, ready to cast ninjutsu to deal with Haku's ninjutsu. Ice Release Secret Jutsu, Magic Mirror Ice Crystal. Haku's voice sounded, and several water pools suddenly appeared around Sasuke. The water seemed to be controlled and began to float in the air. With the continuous injection of Haku's chakra, all the water began to turn into rectangular pieces of solid ice. It was like a cage and Sasuke was trapped in it. Sasuke also seemed to have a plan in mind, and his hand quickly printed. Then, Sasuke put his left hand on his mouth, and a violent shout sounded. Ketan, Great Fireball Jutsu. A flame appeared in front of Sasuke's mouth. As Sasuke's mouth kept blowing, the fire became bigger and bigger, and finally became a fireball with the height of a person, shooting towards a rectangular piece of solid ice. Chapter 259. The huge fireball hit the rectangular ice wall, and from time to time, some sparks splashed around. Under the constant burning of the fireball, some drops of water kept dripping from the ice wall. Sasuke's mouth hung a smile. As long as his fire elemental art could compete with Bai's ice elemental art, then he would have a chance to win. Gradually, the fireball dissipated, but the effect caused by the great fireball jutsu was not as good as Sasuke imagined. On the mirror-like ice wall, there was only a small trace of depression. Even such shallow traces seemed to be constantly recovering. After a while, the traces left by the great fireball disappeared. Haku looked at Sasuke in the magic mirror's ice crystal range, and stepped into the ice wall. Haku's figure instantly appeared on each ice wall. Fire release can't restrain my ice release. Don't worry. I won't take your life, but at least you won't have the power to fight again in a short time. I'm sorry for Zabuza-sama, I must defeat you. Behind the mask, Haku's eyes became sharp. The Senbon in his hand was held tightly in Haku's hand, apparently waiting for the right time to attack Sasuke. Sasuke seemed to have become discouraged because his attack didn't work. Even if Haku said such words to make him lose his combat power, Sasuke seemed to turn a deaf ear. Now is the time. Haku's eyes instantly found a flaw in Sasuke's body, and the Senbon in his hand was thrown out by Haku. Every ice wall with Haku's figure was constantly shooting Senbon towards Sasuke. For a time, Senbon flew towards Sasuke like a rainstorm. But is Sasuke really that easy to be defeated? The answer is naturally no. When Sasuke saw Haku's attack, he took out a scroll from his arms and instantly opened the scroll in his hand. He dipped some blood in his hand from the wound on his body and quickly drew on the scroll. A huge cloud of smoke spurted out from the scroll. The smoke enveloped Sasuke's body, and Haku couldn't see the specific situation inside. However, one could see the sparks produced when the sharp weapons collided, and hear the sound of Senbon's eye being shot down. Suddenly, a huge burst of energy was produced from the smoke. The dense fog was dispersed in an instant, revealing a youth with blood-red eyes and a Magatama spinning in his eyes. Sasuke has opened his family's Kekkei Genkai, Sharingan. With the help of Nangongja, Sasuke has been able to control his Kekkei Genkai very well, but Sasuke has been keeping it as his trump card. Now it was finally time for him to fully unleash his power. Sasuke also had a silver-white long sword in his hand. Although it wasn't as good as Nangongja's Heaven's Retribution sword, it was still a refined weapon. Sasuke just used the long sword in his hand to display the kenjutsu taught by Nangongja to block Haku's Senbon. Sasuke's kenjutsu, like his Sharingan, appeared in front of everyone for the first time. Although Kakashi has been trying to resist the attacks from Zabuza, he still paid attention to Sasuke and Sakura, his two disciples. At this moment, when he saw Sasuke opening his Sharingan, and even holding a silver-white long sword in his hand, he was shocked. Although he knew that Sasuke had been taught by Nangongja, Kakashi didn't expect Nangongja to teach Sasuke his own kenjutsu. As Nangongja's most powerful means, it was actually taught to Sasuke. Nangongja going to let Sasuke become his successor? But Kakashi had no time to think about it, because Zabuza once again launched an attack on Kakashi. It seems that because of Sasuke's matter, Kakashi's mind was slightly disturbed. This time, Kakashi didn't completely avoid Zabuza's attack. A long wound appeared on the side of Kakashi's waist, which was the result of Zabuza's attack. Ah! This kid's performance is indeed very surprising. But Kakashi, if you lose, how long can such a kid last in my hands? Since I can leave a wound on your waist, I can also leave a wound on your neck. Your life. I will take it. Obviously, he was at a disadvantage, but there was no trace of panic on Kakashi's face at all. Instead, when Zabuza left a wound on his body, his face showed a victorious look like a general. Kakashi's hands quickly printed on his chest like butterflies, and a ninjutsu was instantly completed in his hands. Summoning, Earth Release, Tooth Chase Jutsu. Kakashi pressed his hands on the ground, and a curse spread on the ground. Smoke burst out instantly and a huge ninja dog appeared beside him. These ninja dogs were his summoning beasts and the key to Kakashi's victory. On Sasuke's side, with the advantage of his exquisite swordsmanship and taijutsu, Sasuke constantly blocked the senbonzos that were shot at him. Although there was no way to break through the shackles of magic mirror ice crystal for a while, there was no sign of defeat at all. Sasuke. Suddenly, outside the range of magic mirror ice crystal, a familiar voice sounded. Sasuke shot down the senbonzos that were shot at him and looked in the direction of the voice. It was Naruto, who was left in Dana's home to take care of Dana's family. Idiot, why are you here? Although he scolded Naruto as an idiot, Sasuke's heart was still warm. After all, the reason why Naruto came here was because he was worried about their safety, right? Two gangsters who looked particularly fierce came to Uncle Dana's home and wanted to kidnap Uncle Dana's daughter and grandson. I have subdued them. Then I got rid of Uncle Nangong to take care of the ordinary people, and then I came to see if you need my help. Naruto seemed to be very proud of himself as he said to Sasuke. After all, he subdued the people who wanted to cause trouble. Sasuke heard that Naruto got rid of Nangongja to take care of the ordinary people of Wave Country, and his heart was set. Then he turned his eyes and looked at Naruto as if he had thought of a good way to break the situation. Chapter 260. Although Sasuke's eyes were staring at Naruto, his hand was slowly placed on his waist, and he seemed to be unconsciously flicking his fingers. Naruto saw Sasuke's action from the corner of his eyes and understood what Sasuke wanted to do. As a qualified ninja who graduated from the Ninja Academy, Naruto may not be so good at academic issues, but under the supervision of Iruka, a very serious class teacher, he remembered some secret signals clearly in his heart. Just like Sasuke's fingers, which seemed to be unconsciously flicking, was actually a relatively common secret signal in Wood Leaf. Ninjas who weren't from Konoha naturally couldn't understand it, but Konoha's ninjas were very clear. Sasuke seemed to feel that he had fully conveyed his meaning, so he turned around and pulled out several shurikens from his body. Kid, you finally discussed it? Haku wasn't an inexperienced ninja. Over the years he had been wandering around with Zabuza, and his combat experience was extremely rich. Although Haku couldn't understand the secret signal between Sasuke and Naruto, he knew that these two children must have a plan. No matter what method they want to use to break the situation, he has a way to deal with it. After all, this is his best ninjutsu. With such a ninjutsu, Haku naturally thought about how to deal with various attacks. You want to know what we discussed? Come up and try it yourself, but the tuition is a bit expensive. Take your life as the tuition fee. Sasuke's face was full of confidence, and he seemed to have a way to win the battle. Throwing the shuriken in his hand toward each ice wall, Sasuke's hand quickly formed a seal. Katan, Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. Sasuke's mouth suddenly spat out a lot of small fireballs, and the small fireballs spread along the steel wire of Sasuke's shurikens. Before Haku could react to what he wanted to do, Sasuke's hand pulled hard, and several explosive tags appeared on the steel wire of the shurikens. He couldn't break Bai's magic mirror ice crystal with just his fire escape. What? The reason was that Sasuke's Katan wasn't powerful enough. Since his strength wasn't enough, he naturally had to rely on some external forces, right? The explosive talisman was the best external force. Boom, boom, boom. The explosive charms exploded one after another, seemingly randomly looking for a target, but one of the ice walls was hit by at least 4 explosive charms. Naruto, now is the time. Sasuke shouted at Naruto outside, and at this moment, the chakra on Naruto's body seemed to have turned into a substance, like a ribbon around his body. However, the ribbons formed by chakra were densest on Naruto's right hand. At this moment, the veins on his right hand were very obvious. It was obvious that he was under a lot of pressure. Ha! You masked guy, eat my fist. Naruto seemed to be relieving the tingling sensation on his right hand caused by the surge of chakra, and shouted at Haku's figure in the magic mirror ice crystal. At the same time, he also exerted force on his feet and rushed toward the ice wall formed by the magic mirror ice crystal. Because of the strength and speed, the moment Naruto launched the attack, the fog around him seemed to be compressed and then exploded for a moment. However, there was some red chakra in the chakra ribbon wrapped around Naruto's body. Now everyone was paying attention to their own battle, and they didn't notice that this chakra was mixed in Naruto's body. Seeing his fist getting closer and closer to the magic mirror ice crystal, Naruto's heart also calmed down. This time he could finally show off in front of Sasuke and Sakura. After all, Sasuke was able to escape thanks to him, right? Naruto suddenly had a trace of doubt in his heart, because according to his current speed, his fist should have already collided with the ice wall formed by the magic mirror ice crystal. But at this moment, Naruto's hand didn't feel the slightest bit of reality, as if he didn't hit anything at all. Naruto didn't understand what happened, but Sasuke saw it clearly from the perspective of a bystander. Because just as Naruto's fist was about to touch the ice wall, Haku actually removed the ice wall directly. The ice wall that had been bombarded by his explosive tag directly shattered, and Naruto himself directly crashed into the range of the magic mirror ice crystal due to the inertia due to his speed and strength. Damn, I didn't expect these ice walls to be so precisely controlled. Sasuke cursed in his mouth, and the place where the collapsed ice wall was now occupied by a newly formed ice wall. Naruto didn't seem to react. He touched his head and said in confusion, "Is the ice wall so fragile? How can it be broken so easily?" Then he looked at the ice wall that he had just attacked and said with a face full of surprise, "That's right. No way? It's actually there? I didn't encounter any obstacles. Is it Genjutsu?" With that said, he walked foolishly to the newly formed ice wall and wanted to reach out and touch it. But at the same time, Haku's figure appeared in the newly formed ice wall, and several senbonzens were thrown at Naruto by Haku. Naruto also reacted quickly and blocked the senbonzens with a few flashes. "I have to praise you too. After all, a group of genin who have just become ninjas can actually come up with such a method to fight against my ninjutsu. And the cooperation between you two is also very tacit, which is really rare." Haku's applause entered Naruto and Sasuke's ears, but hearing such praise, Sasuke's face was full of anger. His goal was never as simple as winning against someone like Haku. He wanted to defeat his powerful brother and ask him what happened that night. Now he actually suffered a setback in the hands of such a person who has almost no reputation? And even praised by such a person? Stop joking. The pride in Uchiha's blood will never allow him to be despised and teased like this. Chapter 261. When Sasuke didn't notice it, the Magatama in his eyes spun faster and faster, and there were even some signs of splitting, but it seemed that something was missing, and the Magatama in his eyes still didn't split. "Well, after seeing these little tricks of yours, I'll deal with you as soon as possible." After all, Haku looked in the direction of Zabuza with his peripheral vision. Even with the thick isolation, the huge ninja dogs summoned by Kakashi were still so conspicuous. Obviously, Kakashi had already thought of a way to deal with Zabuza. At this time, Haku didn't have time to waste with children like Sasuke and Naruto. Although he didn't want to kill these two children, now that he had reached the point where he had to be heavy-handed, Haku also sped up his speed. Haku's figure appeared in each ice wall formed by the magic mirror ice crystal, and his hand quickly printed, "Ice release, killing water shards." In fact, whether it was Senshard's water shards or Haku's current killing water shards, they were all water release, but Haku infused his unique Kekkei Genkai ice release chakra into it, turning the original water release into ice release. Slender icicles shot towards Sasuke and Naruto, far more than the number of Chasha water kill that he used before. In the eyes of Sasuke and Naruto, Haku's killing water shards were everywhere. Sasuke and Naruto stood back to back. Sasuke used the long sword in his hand, while Naruto took out a kunai. Both of them tried very hard to shoot down the icicles that were shot towards them. However, each icicle contained a tremendous amount of power. Even though they were shot down, the power contained within still made their hands go numb. Click. A crisp sound was heard. It was the sound of the kunai falling to the ground. The kunai in Naruto's hand fell to the ground because he couldn't hold it tightly, and then there was a muffled sound of a sharp weapon piercing into flesh. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Sasuke's heart began to become anxious. Naruto was obviously in danger at this time. What should I do? How can I protect my teammates? There was no way. Sasuke could only make chakra flow faster in his body to stimulate his body and improve his speed and strength. However, there will always be a time when chakra will run out. How long can the chakra in his body last after using several ninjutsu and become meager? Sasuke didn't have the time to think about such things. Now he only hoped that he could protect his friend. However, Sasuke's stamina was constantly being consumed. There were always a few icicles that Sasuke couldn't block and inserted into Naruto's body. The opportunity. After the Sharingan in Sasuke's eyes turned quickly, the Magatama began to split. The upgrade of the Sharingan level will make a great leap in strength for Uchiha clansmen, but it also requires enough chakra to be able to perfectly use the advantage brought by his eyes, right? Naruto looked at Sasuke moving quickly in front of and behind him, trying to block the icicles, but there was already an icicle in his thigh. The tendons in his thigh seemed to be injured and there was no way to move at all. Sasuke's wounds were getting more and more, and sometimes some of the wounds splashed blood on Naruto's clothes and face. The warm feeling kept condemning Naruto. It was because of his own lack of strategy, because of his weak strength, that Sasuke fell into such a dangerous situation. If this situation continues, Sasuke will definitely die. Sasuke, don't worry about me, you just need to protect yourself. Naruto made up his mind. He wanted to give up his life to save his companions, so he said this to Sasuke. Sasuke glanced at Naruto coldly and scolded, "What the hell? Idiot." After that he didn't say anything more, but focused on resisting the icicles that were shot towards himself and Naruto. Sasuke hasn't given up on me. Even if I lose my fighting ability, I don't want to give up on myself. I must do something, at least let Sasuke live. Just when Naruto had such a thought in his mind, Naruto found that his vision blurred. Whether it was Sasuke who was trying to protect himself, or the icicles in the sky, they had disappeared from Naruto's eyes at this moment. Instead, a very dim underground passage appeared in front of Naruto's eyes. A huge fence was placed in front of him, and in the middle of the fence, a talisman with complicated runes was stuck on it. "Do you want to save the person who is trying to protect you? Oh, why is there a voice directly in my mind? Do you want to make yourself strong enough?" Strong? Naruto seemed to see Sasuke again in front of him, trying to resist the icicles that were shot towards him. "Do you want to defeat all the enemies in front of you and make those who provoked you and hurt your friends regret?" I want. Naruto had no other thoughts at this moment, only wanting to make himself strong and save Sasuke, who was now saving him. "Uncover the talisman in front of you. You'll get everything you want." The voice was a little hoarse, but it was full of a sense of charm. This kind of fusion made people feel very strange, but when they heard it in their ears, it was so smooth and there was no sense of disharmony. Naruto's eyes became a little dull, like a marionette. Step by step, he walked to the front of the iron gate. His hand had reached above the talisman, and even the foot of the talisman was lifted by Naruto. But suddenly, many chains appeared on Naruto's body, directly binding his hand, making it impossible for Naruto to uncover the talisman in front of him. "Little girl from the Uzumaki family. It's you again. It's you again. I'm obviously not in your body anymore, but you still want to obstruct me like this? If it wasn't for a chance, a part of my chakra seemed to be stuck in your body, how could you still be alive now? I'm the one who allowed you to live, but you're obstructing me like this." Naruto's eyes were blank for a while, but inside the originally dark iron gate, a huge fiery red figure was raging inside. Obviously it was enraged. Chapter 262. Sasuke glanced at Naruto behind him and found that Naruto seemed to have lost consciousness. His whole body was paralyzed on the ground. His closed eyes and slightly frowned eyebrows seemed to tell Sasuke that Naruto was suffering great pain at the moment. Damn it. Could it be that he was going to watch someone close to him die in front of him again? Sasuke asked himself, and a huge anger surged in his heart, and the Sharingan in his eyes also quickly rotated. On the one hand, Kekkei Genkai does need to rely on the ninja's own chakra, but on the other hand, when the holder of Kekkei Genkai is agitated, the power hidden in the blood will also feed back to the user at the right time. Sasuke is now in such a state. As long as he can hold on long enough, Kakashi-sensei will definitely be able to defeat the mist shinobi called Zabuza and rescue him and Naruto. Sasuke made such a decision in his heart, and the long sword in his hand was also quickly displayed. Many of the parts that were originally obscure when he practiced swordsmanship became smooth at this moment. There is a great horror between life and death, but there is also a great opportunity between life and death. As long as Sasuke succeeds this time, then Sasuke's strength will definitely increase by leaps and bounds to a certain extent. Just when Sasuke was trying his best to block the icicles shooting towards him, Haku's figure stopped in the ice wall formed by the magic mirror's ice crystal. The exposed eyes were staring at Sasuke's back at this moment, as if he saw something particularly terrifying. Even his ninjutsu was temporarily suspended because of the interruption of chakra. Kakashi, who was commanding his ninja dog to attack Zabuza, suddenly became dazed. This chakra. Naruto, it turns out that you've already reached this point? This familiar and frightening chakra aura was the aura of Nine Tails, who attacked Woodleaf and caused heavy losses to Woodleaf. As a fourth-generation disciple, Kakashi knew what kind of power Naruto's body contained. It was precisely because he knew what kind of power Naruto was using at this moment that Kakashi looked at Zabuza. The power of Nine Tails is not so easy to control. Now that Naruto can use the power of Nine Tails, there is a possibility of him losing control. He has to solve the enemy in front of him as soon as possible, and then be ready to seal Naruto, who may go berserk. Not to mention Kakashi's reaction here, Sasuke also noticed the fluctuation of chakra behind him that was enough to be called surging. Turning his head behind him, Naruto, who had just fainted, stood up at this moment. His body was wrapped in a layer of fiery red chakra, as if he was wearing a fiery red dress woven by the sunset, with a violent and gorgeous beauty. Sasuke. You worked so hard to protect me just now, I naturally can't fall behind. I want to protect you, protect everything I cherish. For some reason, Naruto's voice seemed to become lower and hoarser in Sasuke's ears. But the firmness in Naruto's tone was clear to Sasuke. So Sasuke also slightly stepped aside. Since Naruto wants to protect everything he cherishes with his own strength, Sasuke naturally has no reason to stop Naruto. The only thing Sasuke can do is to do his best to help his partner achieve his wish, right? Seeing Sasuke making way for him, Naruto's mouth also had a smile. Naruto knows how proud and stubborn Sasuke is, but now in order to help his partner, Sasuke is willing to give up the enemy in front of him. It's enough to see how important Naruto is in Sasuke's heart, isn't it? Nodding his head to Sasuke, Naruto cast his eyes on Haku's figure in the ice wall formed by Magic Mirror's ice crystal. Just now the two of us were beaten badly by you. Now I'll let you enjoy the feeling of being ruthlessly suppressed. With that said, the chakra on Naruto's body burned more fiercely as if it was splashed with liquor. Behind Naruto, there was even a shadow of a tail that didn't look so solid. The power of 9 tails was actually used by Naruto to the extent of releasing Ichibi. The fiery red chakra belonging to 9 tails kept rushing towards Naruto's hands and feet. Obviously, Naruto is now holding back a big move. Have a taste of my power, Naruto said, and his hands began to form hand seals. Originally, Shadow Clone Jutsu has several hand seals, but with Naruto's deepening control of chakra in his body and his proficiency in Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto can now almost launch it with only one hand seal. Ninjutsu, Multiple Shadow Clone Jutsu. Red Lotus, Sea of Man. Naruto has launched Shadow Clone Jutsu many times in front of Sasuke, but this time is particularly different. Because each shadow clone was wrapped in a fiery red chakra coat formed by Kyuubi's chakra just now on Naruto's body. Shadow Clone Jutsu? Haku has a certain understanding of Woodleaf's Shadow Clone Jutsu. Although Shadow Clone Jutsu does have its own advantages, once it is attacked, it will turn into a cloud of smoke and disappear. Such a weakness is extremely obvious. So, Haku's hands began to form hand seals quickly. Ice Release, 1000 Flying Water Kill. In the air, a few clouds of water instantly turned into icicles, and under Haku's command, they shot towards Naruto's Shadow Clone Jutsu. However, everything wasn't as simple as Haku thought. Because Naruto's Shadow Clone Jutsu was wrapped in 9 tails coat, the icicles shot out by Haku were firmly entangled, and couldn't attack Naruto's Shadow Clone Jutsu at all. Naruto didn't care about Haku's astonishment at all, but instead he accelerated his attack. After both speed and strength were enhanced, Naruto and his Shadow Clone Jutsu instantly defeated the entire Magic Mirror Ice Crystal, and Naruto's body ran out with Sasuke, rushing towards Sakura's direction. These days, Sakura seems to have learned a lot of medical techniques in Aokido. Although he didn't know what level she has reached, he could only let Sakura do some emergency treatment for Sasuke. Chapter 263. Seeing that Naruto and Sasuke were out of danger, and Naruto was able to maintain his sanity, Kakashi was also very pleased. Sakura was also shocked when she saw the wounds on Sasuke's body. She hurriedly bandaged the wounds on Sasuke's body. At the same time, he secretly made up his mind. His talent in this kind of battle was very clear in his heart, but he could control his chakra very accurately. This kind of aptitude is necessary for medical ninja and genjutsu ninja. In this case, why not try to make himself more useful? Of course, these were all words for later because when Naruto put Sasuke down, he returned to the battlefield with Haku again. Naruto knew very well that the state he was using now was only temporary. If he uses it for too long, not only will it cause harm to his body, but it is also likely that his consciousness will be affected by the madness in chakra. So while he can still maintain this state, Naruto decided to beat the person who made him and Sasuke fall into a bitter battle. Naruto's body was now wrapped in the 9 tails coat, which greatly improved Naruto's strength and speed. Soon, Naruto arrived in front of Haku with his speed. Naruto directly punched Haku's face. It seems that because Naruto's momentum was too terrifying, Haku felt that his body couldn't exert any strength at all, so he didn't avoid such a straightforward punch. In other people's perspective, it was as if Haku rushed towards Naruto's fist, which was very funny. Crack. The mask on Haku's face was broken into several pieces because of the impact of Naruto's power. Just when Naruto wanted to continue his attack, Naruto felt that he seemed to see a familiar face from the gap of the mask fragments. Naruto quickly deflected his fist a little bit so that his fist would not fall directly on Haku's face. "How come it's you?" Naruto said to Haku with some surprise and confusion. This masked person who pretended to be Umbu was the big sister who woke him up when he was sleeping in the forest because of training. Haku knew that he had been recognized by Naruto, so he said to Naruto, "Yes, it's me." "What?" Although he can't recognize Haku, Haku can definitely recognize him, so why didn't he kill him when he was unconscious? Instead, he let him fight on the battlefield like this. "I'm the tool of Zabuza-sama, and his request is the meaning of my existence. Since Zabuza-sama wants to attack you, then I naturally have to follow in his footsteps and kill you." Haku's words were very strange, because such a passage didn't seem to have a direct relationship with Naruto's question. However, Naruto felt that he already understood Haku's meaning. Haku regarded him as a killing weapon in the hands of Zabuza. When they met before, he didn't get any instructions from Zabuza, and with some of his own selfish motives, Haku didn't really kill him. But now that Zabuza has become the enemy of Naruto and his team, he naturally has to follow the footsteps of Zabuza-sama, right? On the other hand, in the battle between Kakashi and Zabuza, a huge ninja dog that was nearly 2 meters long was biting Zabuza's shoulder. Zabuza's left hand was hanging by his side. Obviously, his muscles and bones were injured and he wouldn't be able to use it in a short time. Kakashi looked at Zabuza coldly, and his hands were constantly forming seals, as if he was completing a complicated ninjutsu. "If you don't, then this battle will be considered to be over. No matter if it's you or your subordinates, you've already lost. If you're willing to retreat now, I can spare your life. However, if you continue to resist, I don't mind taking your life and your bounty into my own pocket." Zabuza still has a certain strength, and as one of the 7 legendary swordsmen of the Mist, even if he is now in a rebellious state, once he really kills him, it will still make the Mist ninja feel some resentment. In the current ninja world, seeking stability is the consensus of all forces, but for the Mist, who knows if such a group of people will go crazy because they think that killing Zabuza is a slap to their face. So from Kakashi's point of view, he still hopes that Zabuza can retreat on his own. Hearing Kakashi's words, Zabuza's face that was stained with blood and looked a little hideous became even more distorted. "Kakashi, are you pitying me? I Zabuza am a ghost man. I don't care about things like life and death. You want me to leave on my own accord after saying such a thing? Let my saber tell you my answer." With that said, Zabuza used his still intact right hand to gather the beheading broadsword in his hand and rushed towards Kakashi. It's like he's crazy. He didn't use the silent killing jutsu. Instead, he had an indescribable feeling of overbearingness. Kakashi didn't want to kill Zabuza because he was afraid of trouble, but now that Zabuza has gone crazy, what's the harm in killing him? Zabuza has his own pride, doesn't Kakashi have it too? In the center of Kakashi's hand, Raiton chakra was constantly condensing. Soon an ear-piercing squeaking sound could be heard. But with the continuous infusion of Raiton chakra, such a noisy sound slowly disappeared, and the thunder in Kakashi's palm became brighter at this moment. The 3 tomo in his eyes rotated quickly. Kakashi's eyes stared at the position of Zabuza's heart. Haku, who was opposite Naruto and preparing to fight Naruto again, clearly felt the huge chakra in Kakashi's hand, and his eyes seemed to have made a decision. He injected his chakra into his feet at all costs. Even if his meridians were swollen and unbearable, Haku didn't stop the injection of chakra. When chakra seemed to have reached a critical point, Haku suddenly rushed in the direction of Zabuza with a speed that was difficult to be seen by the naked eye. Chapter 264. Kakashi's eyes widened slightly, as if looking at the scene in front of him with a little shock. Raikiri accurately hit a person's body, causing blood to splatter everywhere. And because the nature of Raiton chakra reached the extreme in this move, there were even scorch marks on the wound caused by Raiton chakra. But the person who was hit was not the target he originally wanted to hit, but Haku, who had been following behind Zabuza and was engaged in a fierce battle with his 2 disciples just now. The moment Haku rushed over, even Kakashi's 3 tomo Sharingan almost missed Haku's movement. Haku seemed to have abandoned everything, and the limit in front of Haku didn't seem to exist at all. He burst out with an unimaginable speed. Of course, Kakashi's hand penetrated Haku's chest and stabbed into his shoulder, making his 2 arms basically useless. "Haku, you..." Zabuza looked at Haku, who blocked Kakashi's killing move in front of him, and he was shocked to call out the name of the child he picked up from the garbage dump on the street. Haku turned his head and looked at Zabuza. Although his expression was a bit sad, there seemed to be a trace of satisfaction in his eyes. Zabuza-sama, it's great that you're okay. Am I a qualified tool? Zabuza told Haku again and again that Haku was just a tool for him. Such words engraved a very deep mark in Haku's heart. Haku was willing to do anything for Zabuza, standing in the position of a tool. But Zabuza was very clear about the condition of his body. When he fought with Kakashi just now, he was actually seriously injured. Coupled with Kakashi's nature change and the stimulation of Raitun chakra, even some of the original internal injuries in his body broke out. Now he was actually a candle in the wind, and he could die at any time and anywhere. Originally, Zabuza thought that if he died in the hands of Kakashi, it would be a good choice, but Haku stepped forward and blocked the fatal blow for him. That's right. Bai is a perfect tool for me. Although the words were obviously so cold and indifferent, everyone could hear that Zabuza's tone at the moment was so gentle and soft. Is Haku really just a simple tool for him? As a rebellious mist ninja, Zabuza has been surviving in the chaotic environment of the ninja world for many years. And for such a long time he spent with Haku. People are not plants and trees, how can they be emotionless? It's just that Zabuza buried such feelings deep in his heart. He didn't tell anyone and even wanted to deceive himself. But now that Haku died for him, such deep feelings became deeper and deeper because of the accumulation of time, until now it completely broke out. Zabuza seemed to realize how important Haku was to him. That kind of deep emotion hit Zabuza's tear ducts at this moment. The person who was called Ghost Man had tears welling up in his eyes. Zabuza-sama. Although Zabuza has never shown his inner feelings in front of Haku at this moment, the mist in his eyes was clearly seen by Haku. Haku's heart was full of happiness. He just called out Zabuza's name, but he couldn't say the next word. It's just that his beautiful eyes have lost the brilliance of life at this moment, looking so empty and dull. Haku is dead. Zabuza has seen a lot of dead people. Even when he graduated from the ninja school at a young age, he even killed all his classmates. But at this moment, Zabuza felt that the word death was so heavy, like a huge stone pressing down on his heart. Sure enough, trash will always be trash. A very harsh voice sounded in everyone's ears. Everyone looked at the place where the voice came from, and a short man with sunglasses stood there. There were a lot of people standing behind the man with sunglasses. None of them looked friendly, and all of them had ferocious looks in their eyes. I spent a lot of money to hire you, but what did you do? Before reaching the wave country, I have already lost 2 of my men. In the end, I took action twice. Once I came back like a stray dog, and this time I even let my men die. Zabuza, trash like you is really useless. In that case, let me do it myself. Whether it's you, Danas, or this group of woodleaf ninjas, all of them will be killed by the people I brought. With that said, the man with sunglasses, who was the mastermind behind all of this, said to the group of punks behind him, all of you kill 1 person and I will reward him with 100,000. After hearing the amount of reward mentioned by Kato, the group of punks was also excited. It seemed that whether it was Kakashi or Zabuza, they were walking money bags in their eyes. Ninjas? So what? I have so many people. Even if I use my own life to kill them one by one, I can still kill them. Once he had 100,000, wouldn't he be able to squander it? Originally, Zabuza's face still had a lot of sadness, but now Zabuza's face calmed down. He kicked a kunai under his feet into the air. His lower jaw struggled to break free from the bandage on his face and caught the kunai flying in the air in his mouth. Zabuza said to Kakashi, since my employer is ready to kill me, then you and I are no longer hostile. Now I only want to do one thing, which is to drag this bastard who insulted White to hell. If you think I'm still a good opponent, then please bury me with White after I die. After that, he didn't care whether Kakashi agreed to his request or not. Zabuza looked at Kato with his sharp eyes. It's this person who insulted the only pure land in my heart. Since I'm going to die anyway, isn't it better to die in order to guard my pure land named White? Kato's scalp tingled under Zabuza's gaze, and he quickly shouted to the group of punks around him, what are you doing? Are you stupid? Hurry up. Chapter 265. However, the group of gangsters around Kato were hesitant, because Zabuza's eyes were too terrifying at this moment. Obviously there was no murderous intent, but it was full of indifference to life. Whether it was the enemy's life or his own life, it seemed to have become worthless in Zabuza's eyes at this moment. Zabuza seemed to only want to let him have a good massacre so that he and Haku can leave this world that has tortured him for so many years. Kato was also very nervous, but he didn't have much fighting power. Therefore, Kato kicked one of his lackeys hard, causing him to fall to the ground. Then he took out a thick stack of money from his arms and sprinkled it in the sky. All of you go. I have a lot of money. Whoever can kill this man with bandages on his face, I will give him 500,000. Don't you all go. Money moved people's hearts. When Kato directly took out the 500,000 yuan reward, there was a person who ignored the danger of Zabuza because of the temptation of money. Go. There is only one person on the opposite side. I don't believe that I can't kill him. After saying that, he had already rushed up. Once someone took the lead, many gangsters were also moved and one by one they rushed up. Kill him. This much money is enough for us to enjoy for a long time, we can't let it fall into the hands of others. One by one the gangsters rushed up, but Zabuza's eyes were still so indifferent. Looking at the group of gangsters rushing towards him, he just bit the kunai in his mouth tighter. One of the gangsters approached Zabuza with a thick iron rod in his hand. He directly raised the iron rod in his hand and smashed it towards Zabuza's back. Zabuza didn't dodge but directly hit his body. Ah! I hit him. I hit him. Ordinary people in the ninja world have a kind of awe for ninjas. When a gangster hit Zabuza with the iron rod in his hand, it undoubtedly encouraged more gangsters. However, Zabuza twisted his neck, and the kunai directly slit the little punk's throat. However, the other gangsters were obviously controlled by their own desires. They rushed toward Zabuza as if they were not afraid of death. Kato, who was watching from afar, watched those gangsters who had been driven by his money lose their lives in the hands of Zabuza. The blooming flowers of blood seemed to be the sacrifice offered by Zabuza for Haku's departure. It was beautiful yet filled with a bloody aura, causing everyone to be captivated by this beauty and also caused everyone to feel fear because of this bloody aura. Kato also had some lingering fear in his heart. He seemed to have underestimated ninjas. Kato moved his feet back a little bit, but then he noticed that Kakashi was looking at him with a smile. Kakashi was playing with a kunai in his hand, as if he was ready to shoot it at any time. Seeing such a scene, Kato didn't dare to move at all. In fact, he was just a businessman. Although the money in his hands made him a local tyrant, he didn't have any strength. Now that he was being stared at by a woodleaf ninja, the fear in his heart was so clear that he didn't dare to move at all. Finally, most of the gangsters brought by Kato seemed to have been killed. The remaining gangsters looked at the corpses on the ground, and their minds that were bewitched by money seemed to have sobered up. This ninja. Has he killed so many people? Finally, a gangster ran away. Just like dominoes, a slight movement in one part would affect the rest. Each and every one of the hooligans' hearts were filled with boundless fear. Those with better mental states had their legs trembling, not daring to move forward at all. Those with worse mental states directly ran for their lives. Zabuza seemed to have found that no one was attacking him, so he straightened his back a little. Although there were still many wounds on his body, Zabuza was completely unmoved and he walked straight toward Kato. When the punks saw Zabuzan coming, they hurriedly moved their bodies in a panic, making a path for Zabuzan. You. Kato looked at the gangsters who made way for Zabuza, and he was very angry and shouted at them. But Zabuza quickly arrived in front of Kato. Kato quickly squeezed out a smile on his face and looked at Zabuza with some flattery and said, Zabuza-sama, just now I went too far. How can I swallow the money I gave you? How about this, I will give you all the reward for your mission, and then give you an extra million, and then you and I will go our separate ways. Kato's words were only half finished, but Zabuza's eyes were still staring at Kato indifferently. I will give you money, I have a lot of money. As long as Zabuza-sama can forgive me and let me go, I am willing to give all my money as compensation for offending Zabuza-sama. I just beg you, please let me go. Hearing Kato's words, Zabuza finally opened his mouth. But there was a sad smile on his face, which made everyone's heart tremble. What I lost. You can't afford it. Moreover, for me now, what is the value of money? You should obediently become the sacrifice I prepared for my Haku. I hope that Haku can live in a peaceful era in her next life, so that God can live up to her kindness. Kato seemed to want to say something, but Zabuza directly cut Kato's throat with the bitter in his mouth. Blood sprayed on Zabuza's face, but Zabuza didn't have the slightest intention of wiping it off. Instead, he stumbled to the side of Haku's body and directly lay on the ground. Suddenly, he felt a trace of coldness on his forehead. In the wave country it was snowing. Finally, Zabuza's eyes were no longer indifferent. Instead, they were filled with a kind of gentle love. He put his hand on Haku's hair and looked at the snowflakes falling from the sky. He murmured, Haku, Haku, Haku. Haku, did you see it? Snowing. The snowflakes are so beautiful. Chapter 266. In a forest next to the bridge, Nangongja looked at the snowflakes falling from the sky and everything that happened on the Wave Country Bridge with a lot of emotions in his heart. Originally, Nangongja came here to prevent Kakashi from making any mistakes, and there was no way to guarantee the safety of Naruto and the other children. But he had to say that Naruto and Sasuke's performance was indeed beyond Nangongja's imagination. Far away, Nangongja seemed to see Itaka wearing a very shabby armor leading a group of people to the bridge where Naruto and the others were. Nangongja also shook his head and turned back to the Blue Wood Hall. Perhaps with the help of this bridge and people like Izawa, the small country of Wave could embark on a difficult and tortuous road to rise up. However, all of this has nothing to do with Nangongja. In order to fulfill Zabuza's last wish, Kakashi buried Zabuza and Haku together. As for the Zenjutsu, he also inserted the Zenjutsu on their graves and used it as a tombstone. After all, the Zenjutsu belonged to the Mist Village. Even if Kakashi took it away, some of the special techniques still couldn't be mastered. Because of such a Zenjutsu, he didn't know how long it would take to deal with the Mist Village. It was better to leave it here as a tombstone for Zabuza. "We are leaving tomorrow, are you ready?" Kakashi said to Nangongja. After all, Nangongja said that he would go to Woodleaf and Watergate to talk about some important information face to face. "Of course, I don't have any luggage so I can leave any time and anywhere." Nangongja smiled, but Kakashi's expression was a little hesitant. It seemed that he wanted to say something, but he didn't know whether to say it or not. "Do you have any questions to ask me?" Obviously, Nangongja also saw Kakashi's hesitant expression, so he asked. When Kakashi heard Nangongja's words, his heart sank and he said to Nangongja, "As far as I know, such a Blue Wood Hall is actually established by a ninja organization, right?" Hearing Kakashi's words, Nangongja also nodded to show that it was true. And in Nangongja's heart, it turned out that Kakashi was hesitant about this. Indeed, he, a person who hasn't been in contact with Woodleaf for a long time, suddenly appeared in the subordinate organization of another organization. If it wasn't for his good relationship with Kakashi, and he also helped Kakashi do a lot of things in the past few days, Kakashi wouldn't use his own mouth to ask questions, but use his own kunai to ask questions. "Kakashi, I already know what you mean. This superior organization of Blue Wood Hall does have a lot of connections with me. That's why I can appear in this Blue Wood Hall, but I can assure you that this organization can't bind me. This time, I hope to go back to Woodleaf with you and there are indeed various reasons. You can believe me." Although Nangongja still didn't tell Kakashi about his real relationship with the Bloodcloth Pavilion, he made it clear that although he had a relationship with the Bloodcloth Pavilion, the Bloodcloth Pavilion couldn't bind him to do things that he didn't want to do. This situation was enough to make Kakashi believe in Nangongja. After all, they were old friends who had known each other for many years. The understanding between them was also an important factor that made Kakashi believe in Nangongja. "Sorry, just now I also..." Kakashi stepped forward and patted Nangongja's shoulder with his hand, obviously a little guilty. After all, he suspected Nangongja. Although this kind of interrogation was no different from routine, no one liked the feeling of being suspected, right? "It's nothing. This is the Kakashi that I know, isn't it?" Although sometimes he looks very lazy, on some matters of principle, Kakashi is absolutely not willing to have the slightest negligence. Nangongja smiled and said to Kakashi. After that, he didn't say anything. He just turned and walked into the inner hall of Blue Wood Hall. Only Kakashi was still sitting there, staring at Nangongja's departing figure. No one knew what he was thinking. The next day, early in the morning, Nangongja, Kakashi, and Naruto had already gotten up. The five of them quietly left the location of Blue Wood Hall. Obviously, they didn't want to disturb the people of Wave Country. They just wanted to leave quietly. Nangongja stood at the end of the bridge and looked at the looming Wave Country in the morning fog. He didn't say anything and left. Originally, because they had to worry about the speed of an ordinary person, Naruto and the others spent a lot of time on the way to Wave Country. However, this time they were traveling with Nangongja. Naturally, they could travel at full speed. There was nothing special along the way, so after a short journey, Nangongja arrived at the gate of Woodleaf Village. It was also a coincidence that the gatekeepers were still the two who didn't recognize him in Watergate, Gang Zitai and Shinyu Chuyun. This time these two people recognized Nangongja. They didn't stop Nangongja and entered Woodleaf Village. After bidding farewell to Kakashi and Naruto, Nangongja also returned to his home. "How long has it been since I came back?" Nangongja asked himself quietly. He found that he hadn't come back for several years, but the house was still very clean. It seems that Yabuki cleaned up the house for him again. Nangongja just entered his house, but an umbu suddenly appeared in front of Nangongja. But Nangongja looked very calm. There was no trace of panic when a person suddenly appeared in front of him. Nangong Shinobi Hokage invites you. Sure enough, this umbu belongs to the 4th Hokage, Watergate's umbu. I was going to see Watergate. Although the time is different from what I imagined, it doesn't matter. Nangongja smiled and suddenly his figure disappeared. As an umbu, it is common for him to suddenly disappear, but his target suddenly disappeared in front of him. This is simply a disgrace to the umbu. But there is no way. Nangongja is indeed much faster than him. Such an uncomfortable mood can only be endured by himself. The umbu surrounded him and finally found Nangongja's figure, and hurriedly used all his strength to catch up. As the person who invited Nangongja, if he is left far behind by Nangongja, how can he survive in the future? Chapter 267. So, you're back? After leaving Konoha for more than 2 years and nearly 3 years you came back again? Watergate sat in his seat and looked at Nangongja with a faint smile. When Watergate first returned to Woodleaf Village, he actually hoped that he could use Nangongja's power and reputation to stabilize the situation. After he left Woodleaf, those ambitious people were ready to make trouble. At that time, Nangongja agreed to such a proposal. But to be honest, the most difficult period for Watergate in Woodleaf was the 2 years when Nangongja immediately came to Woodleaf. Whether it was the pressure from the higher-ups of Woodleaf or the fact that his child was column force from Nine Tails, Watergate felt that a part of him seemed to have collapsed under the heavy pressure. Watergate, I understand. My actions will definitely make you complain, and I'm prepared to be scolded by you. But now, what we should be concerned about is not my leaving without saying goodbye, but something more important. Do you understand? Nangongja looked into Watergate's eyes and said very seriously to Watergate. Watergate was actually a relatively open-minded person. When Nangongja said that there was something more important, Watergate quickly adjusted his state of mind. He stretched out his hand to Nangongja and said very politely, "In that case, please sit down. If there's anything important, tell me now." Nangongja looked around at the dark corners. Watergate also understood Nangongja's meaning. He waved his hand to the dark corners and said, "You guys go back first. You guys can leave first. Nangongjiaonan won't cause any harm to me." When Watergate's voice fell, several figures also rushed out from the dark corners. Obviously, these people were Watergate's direct umbu, responsible for Watergate's safety. Nangongja saw that there was no one except himself and Watergate, so he nodded and sat on his chair. He seemed to be thinking about his words for a while and finally he spoke. Woodleaf's Chunin exam this time will have a huge change. When Watergate heard the term Chunin exam, he was also faintly surprised. Originally, the Chunin exam was just a very ordinary exam, but this time's Chunin exam was different from the usual ones. After the Nine Tails attack on the village and Watergate's resignation for several years, the daimyo of the Land of Fire were quite dissatisfied with Woodleaf. Such dissatisfaction was reflected in the various policies of the daimyo of the Land of Fire towards Woodleaf. Such behavior undoubtedly made Woodleaf suffer a huge loss. And this Chunin exam was actually planned by Watergate to let Woodleaf's new strength shine in front of the daimyo of the Land of Fire, so as to repair the gap between the daimyo of the Land of Fire and Woodleaf's distrust. Now, such an important thing was said by Nangongja. It really made Watergate feel very uncomfortable. Changes? From inside or outside? Watergate asked Nangongja. Since Nangongja's purpose of returning to Woodleaf was to tell him information, Watergate also asked directly. No matter what Nangongja may ask for, as long as Watergate can get the information he wants, can't he? Seeing Watergate's meaning, Nangongja also smiled slightly. What if I say, both? When Watergate heard Nangongja's words, he had a look of understanding on his face. Indeed, if such a plan didn't have any spies in Woodleaf, even if Nangongja dares to say it, Watergate wouldn't believe it. It seems that you have a goal in mind? Seeing Watergate's face return to normal, Nangongja said to Watergate. You've already said it to this point, how can I not think of it? The information of the Chunin exam was announced not long ago, but there are only a few invited guests. The supporters of Woodleaf, the Fire Country and the Kazekage of Sunagakure, who cooperated with Woodleaf to hold the Chunin exam. If I were an enemy, I would definitely start with these two people. Because even if Woodleaf knows that these two people have problems, there is no way to directly start with them, right? As for the inside of Woodleaf, there are only a few people who can have the intention to cover up hostile people in the Chunin exam. It's nothing more than the two leaders of the Elder Group, Zhuan Xiaochun and Mito Menitis, the 3 generations Hokage, and the actual leader of the root organization, Shimura Danzo. When the name Shimura Danzo was mentioned, Watergate's eyes suddenly flashed with light. Finally, Watergate understood why Nangongzhi returned to the village so anxiously, and even told him this information without any conditions. Everything is because of Danzo. Although the direct conflict between Nangongzhi and Danzo happened when Watergate left the village, the Umbu of Hokage still has information about these things. Although it's a bit vague, these things between Danzo and Nangongzhi can still be seen. As long as Watergate can find anything about Danzo's involvement in the Chunin exam, there is no doubt that Watergate can use various means to weaken Danzo's power. As long as Watergate can be ruthless, it's not impossible to directly remove Danzo's position in Woodleaf. Over the years, Danzo has used some insidious means against Watergate. Even Watergate is not willing to let go of such an opportunity to punish Danzo. It seems that you already know why I'm here? Nangongzhi knew that Watergate must know why he came back to Woodleaf, so he continued, "In fact, I still like Woodleaf very much. After all, I have lived here for many years and even fought for such a village for many years. If there is a slight possibility that Woodleaf can guarantee the safety of the people I cherish, I won't take my sister, Mishiro and little Linger away from Woodleaf. Everything started because Danzo wanted to do something to me. I have thought countless times, if Danzo really lost his ability to cover the sky with one hand, would I bring my family back? I found that I really want to bring my family back. This information is an opportunity to transform Woodleaf and become less sick. I believe that you, Watergate, love such a village more than I do. You can also see that Konoha is slowly decaying at this moment. Do you want to cut off a piece of rotten meat from Konoha's body, or let Konoha, this big tree, wither? I look forward to Watergate making the right choice." Chapter 268. It has to be said that language is really a magical art. In the beginning, although Watergate seemed to be polite to Nangongzhi, Watergate actually didn't trust Nangongzhi in his heart. After all, Nangongzhi has been in the Woodleaf for a long time, and Nangongzhi wasn't a ninja trained by the Woodleaf, so Nangongzhi's loyalty to the Woodleaf was really questionable. When Kakashi returned to the Woodleaf, not only did he hand over his task, but he also told Watergate about the relationship between Nangongzhi and the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Although the Blood Cloak Pavilion didn't cause any major trouble in the past few years, as the leader of an organization, the Blood Cloak Pavilion quietly scattered its seeds in every country. On the contrary, the other party still actively expelled them in the name of charity, which would only make people despise them for no reason. Therefore, whether it was the Land of Fire or other countries, they could only pinch their noses and let the Blood Cloak Pavilion set up a medical center in their country. However, there are many Umbu around each medical center from time to time, and once there is a move, it will be reported to the high-level ninja of each village. But this time, in the conversation with Nangongzhi, Nangongzhi didn't hide anything, and directly analyzed the pros and cons for Watergate. How important the Chunin exam is, Nangongzhi was very clear in his heart. "Okay, I believe you. What kind of information do you have?" Watergate looked at Nangongzhi, although Nangongzhi was too straightforward when talking to him, and he didn't even have the slightest intention to conceal his purpose. But Watergate didn't hate such a person. In the past few years he has dealt with the elders of Kiba and the group of old guys en route. Their cunning appearance really made Watergate feel a little tired. Suddenly, a person like Nangongzhi appeared, so Watergate also felt a lot more relaxed. The information I got is not so perfect, but now I can be sure that the Sand Village has been pulled into this group of people who want to do something big in the Woodleaf. After all, in the last Shinobi World War, the Sand Village lost a lot of people, and they have a motive to hate the Woodleaf. At the same time, it seems that one of the Sannin of the Woodleaf, Orochimaru, is also involved. It is worth noting that Orochimaru used to be a member of the Akatsuki. Although Orochimaru betrayed the Akatsuki in name, there are still some connections between the two sides. This plan to attack the Woodleaf inevitably has the Akatsuki in it. Nangongzhi saw that Watergate seemed to have trust in him, so he directly said this information to Watergate. Sand Village, Orochimaru, Akatsuki. Watergate heard these three names and his eyebrows wrinkled. After all, None of these three are easy to provoke, and now they want to join forces to find trouble with the Woodleaf? This was truly a troublesome matter. It seems that it's time for me to let my master come back secretly. When the time comes, the Woodleaf will have me, the 3 generations, and my master, 3 Kage-level powerhouses. But the other side also has Kazekage, Orochimaru, and maybe even some Akatsuki members. In fact, we are in a passive state of defense. In such a state, we must make sure that there is an essential gap between our strength and the enemy's strength. But now, it's obvious that the strength gap between the two sides is not big and we are even losing. After saying that, Watergate looked at Nangongja. When Nangongja had a conflict with Root before, the strength he showed was already Kage level or infinitely close to Kage level strength. If such a strong force joins his side, the odds of winning will definitely be much higher. Watergate's gaze was so obvious, Nangongja naturally understood Watergate's meaning, so he said to Watergate, "Since I'm here, naturally I'm not prepared to be a bystander. But you should also be clear about my condition. Woodleaf's rotten meat has been staring at me. After this matter, although Woodleaf may suffer some losses, but as the Hokage who can lead the whole village to resist the invasion of other people, such a name is extremely good for you. You get fame, I get safety, these two don't seem to have any conflict, right? Even if this rotten meat is really cut off, the power in your hands will be stronger. What's not to like?" Nangongja looked at Watergate and said with a smile. Although he doesn't like this kind of method, after all, he is the leader of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Even if he doesn't like this kind of thing, he must understand it in his heart. For Woodleaf, Watergate, and Nangongja, Danzo is a thorn in their flesh, a thorn in their flesh, and a thorn in their flesh. If he can solve this problem as soon as possible, it's naturally a good thing. You go back first, this matter is of great importance and it involves a lot of interest. Although I am the Hokage, this village is not under my control. If I make a decision, I will send someone to inform you. Although Watergate's words sound like a tactful refusal, Nangongja knows that Watergate has already been moved. But the Hokage family is not only composed of Watergate, there is also the existence of the 3 generations. Even if Danzo is disloyal, he is an old comrade of the 3 generations. Watergate has no way to decide Danzo's life and death. This trip, in fact, has already fulfilled Nangongja's expectations. Because as long as a new force like Watergate agrees with his ideas, then in order to fight for the interests of his new generation, in order to help those who support him to gain benefits, Watergate has no way to retreat. In that case, then I will take my leave. Nangongja cupped his hands to Watergate and was about to leave, but he couldn't help but say to Watergate, "Take care of Naruto more. In this battle in the Wave Country, Naruto has begun to awaken the 9 Tails chakra in his body. Although he can now forcibly control the power with his own consciousness, once the power is released too much, it will definitely go berserk. Go back and discuss with Shinakushina whether to continue to strengthen the seal of the 9 Tails or start to teach Naruto to use the power in his body. I hope you can make a decision early." After all, Nangongja was responsible for protecting the safety of Shinakushina and Naruto when Watergate left the village. He has a natural concern for Naruto and Nangongja. So although he knows that these words are not appropriate, Nangongja still said it. "Don't worry. Kakashi has already told me these things when he came back. When I get home, I will naturally discuss this matter with Shinakushina and Naruto." Watergate didn't seem to take Nangongja's overstep to heart. Instead, he smiled brightly at Nangongja, as if he was very happy that his son could be cared for by others. Chapter 269. After a day's work, even though Watergate was already a Kage-level powerhouse, Hokage, such a high-intensity profession still made Watergate's forehead ache. Fighting a battle of wits and courage with that group of old foxes is really too exhausting for his brain cells. Mom, I was so powerful at that time, Sasuke, that arrogant guy was completely unable to fight, but I suddenly burst out with a super powerful chakra to save him. Although I don't know where the sound in the sewer came from, it was a bit scary. Before entering the door, Watergate heard his son Uzumaki Naruto talking to his mother Shinakushina about his deeds in the Wave Country. Of course, he also exaggerated his role and belittled Sasuke. This kind of behavior, whether it was Watergate or Shinakushina, has been accustomed to. "I'm back." Opening the door of his house, Watergate took off his Haori and hung it on the hanger at the door, then shouted to his family. Hearing Watergate's voice, Shinakushina also hurried to the door of her house to greet Watergate. On the contrary, Naruto's originally excited face suddenly became a little cold, and he didn't follow Shina Kushina to the door of her house to greet his father. Welcome back, Watergate. Just now, Naruto told me a lot about this mission. I didn't expect that even the Mist Ninja Zabuza was involved. Fortunately, little Kakashi was responsible and didn't let Naruto get hurt, otherwise I would have gone to his door to find him. Speaking of this, Shina Kushina didn't have the gentle state in front of Naruto. Instead, her blood-red hair was flying, making people feel very scared. Shina Kushina was also a tyrant and would leaf, known as the Blood Pepper. Watergate also gently wiped a drop of sweat on his forehead. He didn't know if it was real or not, and he smiled at Shina Kushina, and even criticized Kakashi as worthless. If Kakashi knew that his sensei actually said that to him, maybe he could only hug his intimate heaven and cry in the toilet. Since the family has arrived, naturally, it was time to prepare dinner. Naruto didn't know how to cook, so this kind of thing naturally didn't have Naruto's turn. Over the years, Shina Kushina has been preparing meals at home, and since Watergate came back, he also helped Shina Kushina from time to time. If outsiders saw this, they certainly couldn't help but praise family harmony. But for some reason, Naruto still has some feelings of rejection towards his father. After so long, although there was no Cold War between the two, they still kept a certain distance. There was no intimacy between Naruto and Shina Kushina. Naruto, come and clean the table, then bring the food to the table. Seeing that the food was almost ready, Shina Kushina shouted to Naruto, who was watching TV in the living room. Naruto also skillfully arranged the things on the table, then brought the cooked food to the table with Shina Kushina. Naruto. While eating, Watergate suddenly called out Naruto's name. Naruto didn't even raise his head, just eating the food in his bowl. Shina Kushina saw Naruto's reaction and directly slapped Naruto's back, then said to Naruto, "Dad is calling you, why don't you respond?" Naruto also put down the bowl in his hand very impatiently, looked at Watergate and said, "What's the matter?" Although Naruto's attitude wasn't so good, Watergate didn't get angry. He was the one who let down his wife and child, and now Naruto has a grudge against him in his heart. This kind of thing is really normal. When you fought with a ninja in the Wave Country, did a kind of chakra that didn't belong to you come out of your body? TSK. Did Kakashi-sensei tell him? Yes, what's the matter? Naruto's answer was neither cold nor indifferent, as if he didn't feel that all this was worth investigating. The chakra that suddenly emerged in your body is the result of the Kyuubi breaking free from the seal. I sealed it into your body, giving you such power. In the shinobi world there are 8 people like you. We call such people with tailed beasts in their bodies human column force. Your mother, Shina Kushina, is the previous 9 tails column force. Since you have begun to gradually use the power of the tailed beast in your body, then I want to give you a choice. Watergate said until here and paused slightly. Shina Kushina didn't think much of it at first, but when Watergate said that he was also a human column force, a touch of sadness appeared in her eyes. Even if her mentality is optimistic, the feeling of being hostile for no reason is still deeply engraved in Shina Kushina's heart, and it is difficult to dispel. You want me and your mother to completely seal the 9 tails in your body so that he can only hide in your body, and from then on he won't release his chakra to disturb the chakra in your body? Or do you want your mother to teach you how to use the power of the 9 tails and truly bear the identity of a column force? Now Naruto has no mood to be angry with Watergate, because Naruto knows that he is indeed facing an important choice. The 9 tails in his body is a problem that must be solved. Should he completely seal it, or should he borrow the power of the tailed beast like all the column force? Naruto's young heart is facing such a choice that can determine his life at this moment. Watergate, Naruto is still so young. You're asking him to make such a choice now, isn't it a little? Shina Kushina looked at her child with some worry, then looked at Watergate with a slight reproach. As long as it is a mother, there is no mother who doesn't think for her child. Now that her child is obviously facing an extremely important choice in his life, Shina Kushina's heart is also in her mouth. However, Naruto, who had been silent, suddenly raised the rice bowl in front of him and started eating. I can't make up my mind for the time being. Since I know that I can't make my choice in a short period of time, I might as well eat properly and not let this trouble me. Chapter 270. Nangongja walked on the street near his house. It was about 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Most of the people who were working had finished their work and were heading home. On the contrary, Nangongja was very conspicuous, like a person who was going against the flow of the crowd. Walking aimlessly like this, Nangongja had a lot of thoughts in his mind. Although he brought Mashiro, Nangong Ro and Little Linger to the headquarters of the Blood Cloth Pavilion, where the three girls could eat and drink without worry and were very safe, Nangongja still faintly felt that he was ashamed to face the three girls. It was clearly the most precious period of his life, but he had to hide in the depths of the Blood Cloth Pavilion headquarters. If it wasn't because he wasn't strong enough and couldn't deal with the attacks from the Root organization, why would the girls have to stay in the headquarters of the Blood Cloth Pavilion? Little Zhe? I just heard from Sakura that you came back with them. I didn't expect to meet you here. A figure suddenly stood in front of Nangongja, and a familiar voice knocked on Nangongja's eardrums. The person who came was Sakura's mother, Yechue. Yabuki? I don't have any meaning in staying at home alone, so I just came out to stroll around. Sakura's strength is still very good. As long as she meets a suitable teacher, she will grow up quickly. Looking at Yechue in front of him, Nangongja also praised Sakura. Alright. As Xiao Ying's mother, I know very well what kind of person she is. Although her grades were very good when she was in the ninja school, ninjas aren't powerful just because they do well in the exam, right? But these days Sakura has become stronger and stronger, and this is enough. Although it sounded humble, Yechue's eyes were brimming with pride for its child. Nangongja looked at Yechue and felt an indescribable envy in his heart. At that time he had personally suppressed his enemy Rue Jin, and taken the Blood Cloak Pavilion into his hands. At that time, Nangongja told himself that this was enough. He had already taken revenge for his past life. But for some reason, there was an indescribable feeling in his heart that was difficult to smooth out. Nangongja had no choice but to focus all his attention on organizing the Blood Garment Pavilion. Now the Blood Garment Pavilion was completely on the right track, allowing Nangongja to have some leisure time. This strange feeling became even more obvious. Looking at Yechue, who was so proud of her daughter in front of him, Nangongja couldn't help but think that if his parents were still alive and saw him now, would they be as proud of him as Yechue? But all this was just a hopeful imagination in Nangongja's mind. Nangongja knew very well that his parents had already left this world. They were so small, like the dust scattered in the air in this world. With a gentle touch from an ambitious person like Rue Jin, they had already lost the only mark they left in this world. Alright. There has been no one in your house for a long time, so you probably can't cook dinner, right? If you don't mind, why don't you come to my house for dinner? I and Sakura's father also want to express our gratitude to you. If it weren't for you in the Wave Country, Sakura wouldn't have made such great progress, right? Yechue seemed to have discovered a very important problem and said to Nangongja. Nangongja looked at Yechue. In fact, Nangongja wasn't so willing to disturb Yechue's family. After all, Sakura's father was a Chunin from Woodleaf, and the burden of the mission was not so light. Sakura had just returned home from a trip to the Wave Country. It was a rare day for the family of three to reunite, so it would be a bit inappropriate for him to go alone, right? But looking at Yechue's expectant eyes, Nangongja couldn't say no. Or maybe Nangongja also faintly resisted the idea of him eating dinner alone at home? Anyway, in the end, Nangongja still agreed to Yechue's invitation, and went to the market with Yechue to buy ingredients for dinner. He watched as Yechue haggled with the peddler over a little bit of price. He watched as Yechue was overjoyed over finding good ingredients. He watched as Yechue was overjoyed over the fact that the item he wanted to buy was on sale. Nangongja couldn't help but put himself in the shoes of Yechue. If he, Nangong Ro and Mashiro came here to buy things, would it be the same scene? Nangongja's heart was so looking forward to it, because this kind of ordinary life with a little warmth was the life Nangongja yearned for the most. But Nangongja's heart of wanting to bring Nangong Ro, Mashiro and Little Linger back to Woodleaf had instantly cooled down, because Danzo was still in Woodleaf, and as long as Danzo was still in power, he and his family would definitely be subjected to all kinds of coercion. This time, he must beat Danzo to the bottom of the valley, otherwise this kind of life would definitely not happen here. Little Zhe. Yechue seemed to have negotiated the price with the vendor in front of him, and shouted at Nangongja while waving his hand. Nangongja also broke free from his thoughts. No one could say for sure what would happen in the future, and since that was the case, he didn't have to care so much. Everything in the world was done, and the rest was up to fate. Nangongja looked in the direction of Yechue, and smiled as he walked in the direction of Yechue. On the way home, Nangongja had bags of various sizes hanging all over his body. About a quarter of them were ingredients and the rest were actually clothes. One had to know that Yechue's family originally had their own clothing store, but Yechue still bought a lot of clothes. It was glorified as observing and learning, but looking at Yachue's excited face, it didn't look like it was learning at all. Instead, it looked like it was venting its shopping desire. Okay, we're at the door. That guy in my family has always been unwilling to shop with me. A lot of the things I like have always been placed in the store, and this is simply torture for me. Fortunately, I met little Zhe this time and he can help me carry these things. Yachue said excitedly to Nangongzhe, and at the same time, complained about her husband. But why was Nangongzhe's eyes filled with light? Was this a public display of affection? This was a public display of affection. Chapter 271. Dear, I'm back. Yachue had just entered the door of his house. He hadn't even taken off his shoes when he shouted loudly inside. Nangongzhe also reluctantly put the big and small bags on his body on the ground and said softly, "Sorry to disturb." After taking the slippers handed to him by Yachue, Nangongzhe also took off his shoes. At this moment, Xiaoying walked down the stairs in pink pajamas with lotus flowers, looking like she had not woken up yet. She rubbed her eyes and looked at her mother with sleepy eyes. "Mom, you're back. What are we eating tonight?" "It's stew," Yachue said to Sakura, then she moved her body slightly and said to Sakura, "There is a guest today. Your uncle Nangong is eating with us because there is no one at home." Ah. At first, Sakura was still responding to her mother, but when her sleepiness gradually faded, Sakura finally saw Nangongzhe who was standing behind Yachue. She immediately screamed and ran upstairs to her room. Nangongzhe was about to say hello to Sakura, but Sakura had already run away. This made Nangongzhe awkwardly withdraw his hand that was already stretched out halfway. "This girl. Little Zhe is not an outsider. Isn't it just wearing pajamas?" "It's nothing," Yachue said with some blame, but then she still brought Nangongzhe to her house and let Nangongzhe temporarily sit in the living room for a while. Originally, Nangongzhe still hoped that he could be Yachue's assistant. After all, he actually knew how to cook. However, he was driven out by Yachue's attitude of, "This is my battlefield. If you dare to come, I will fight with you." With no choice, Nangongzhe could only sit in the living room of Yachue's house obediently. Although he had been here a few times, many places had changed. There were a lot of things like group photos. Nangongzhe had nothing to do, so he casually looked at the photos hanging on the wall. Among these photos, most of them were photos of Sakura. There was a photo of Sakura's first training with him. Because he was too fierce, she had tears in her eyes. There was also a photo of Sakura after she entered the ninja school and got the age medal. Of course, she joined Team 7 led by Kakashi. Photos with Naruto, Sasuke, and Kakashi were also included. Nangongzhe was looking at the photos enthusiastically. Sakura had already tidied up and walked out of her room. Just as she walked to the stairs, she saw Nangongzhe looking at some of her photos. Things like her photos, it was naturally nothing to look at, but once others saw them, an indescribable sense of shame emerged from her heart. With Nangongzhe's strength, he naturally noticed that someone came down from upstairs, so Nangongzhe also looked back at Sakura who was coming down. She slowly walked to Xiaoying's side and placed her hand on Xiaoying's head, caressing it slowly, just like how Xiaoying acted when she first arrived at her house. Unknowingly, Sakura has also grown up so much. The little brat who used to cry at every turn has now become a strong and beautiful girl. To be honest, Nangongzhe almost watched Sakura grow up. From a young age, Sakura was very close to him, and he also treated Sakura as his own family. When he looked at Sakura seriously, he found that time really passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, the little girl had now become a slim and graceful girl. Not to mention little Linger, Mishiro, and Nangongro who were older than Sakura. Nangongzhe reflected on himself. Have I always regarded them too much as children? Sakura's performance in the Wave Country's mission was not so outstanding, but she also performed well as a ninja. Although her strength still needs to be improved, she can be considered to be able to protect herself. And little Linger has fought several times more than Sakura, and he has never relaxed his teaching of little Linger. Now little Linger's strength has reached the level of an elite chunin. Nangongro herself graduated from the Ninja Academy, and her mastery and application of chakra is very delicate. In addition, she has transcended the boundary and synchronized her internal force with chakra. Such strength is actually infinitely close to the top level of Jonin. On the other hand, Mishiro, although he came from the root, has never practiced and he is not so interested in practicing, but he has his own introduction to some management and operation. Now in the Bloodcloth Pavilion, it is Mishiro who has replaced him to command the overall situation. These 3 girls, he still treats them as children who have not grown up, so he carefully protects them. At this moment, Nangongja suddenly began to reflect on himself. Is his desire to protect too much? Although it is gratifying to be protected, excessive protection will become a heavy shackle on a person's body. Nangongja also understands this in his heart, but it is easy to know and difficult to do. Now Nangongja has made such a mistake. On the other hand, when Sakura heard Nangongja's praise, she felt a little at a loss for a while. She blushed and ran directly to the kitchen to prepare dinner with her mother. Yabuki, brother-in-law Haruno hasn't come back yet? Nangongja saw that Sakura's father, Haruno Hajime, didn't seem to be at home, so he asked curiously. This guy. I told him to go home early. Today our daughter finally came back, so the whole family should have dinner together. I don't know where he went, but you don't have to worry, your brother-in-law is now on a long vacation, so he won't take on any tasks. Even if there is an urgent task, it won't be the turn of a chunin like your brother-in-law. He should be delayed by something, so he will be back soon, right? Yabuki said to Nangongja, but there was a sense of comfort in her words. A profession like ninja, although it looks glorious, is very dangerous. The slightest mistake can lead to death. As the wife of a ninja, and even her daughter is a ninja, Yabuki must have a heavy burden in her heart, right? On the contrary, Sakura did not think as deeply as Yabuki and Nangongja. When she heard her mother's words, she turned her head and continued to busy herself with the things at hand. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.